Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 81, Snap. Iron Man Tony Stark felt the space in front of him shatter like glass. The illusion that had troubled him finally disappeared, which made Tony Stark breathe a sigh of relief. Phew, this is such an unpleasant trip. Hey, Captain Rogers, if our mission can be easier, I will consider not resigning. Tony Stark's voice sounded in the communication channel. Even the artificial intelligence Friday was not immune to the previous illusion. The communication system was not reopened until now by Tony Stark. Speak less, Tony. Although I don't know why the illusion disappeared, the enemies around me didn't disappear. Captain America Rogers' voice came from the communicator, and it was more solemn than ever. K, Ultron boy, did you eat anything? Hearing Rogers' reminder, Tony Stark also cast his eyes around, and when he saw Ultron, his eyes widened immediately. In front of Tony Stark, Ultron, who was 3 meters and 3 meters tall, looked like an adult looking down at a child when facing Tony, and looked full of deterrence. Boom! Tony Stark's answer was a palm cannon from Ultron. The hot palm cannon burned the iron suit red, and Ultron aimed at the weakest part of Tony's vibranium suit. There was some vibranium here, but more of it was titanium alloy metal. Crackling, crackling. A string of electric sparks appeared on the iron suit, and Tony Stark fell to the ground again, which made Tony Stark have no time to complain, and directly activated the weapon system on the iron suit. Hey, little Ultron, you've completely pissed me off. Daddy's going to teach you a lesson. Tony Stark controlled the Iron Man suit and rushed directly towards Ultron, raising his right fist, and the energy absorbed before quickly gathered on his fist. Boom! This time it was Ultron's turn to be knocked away. The huge force made Ultron crash into an office building, and Tony Stark's attack became the signal for the Avengers to launch a counterattack. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Agent Hawkeye Barton shot arrows one after another quickly, and the surrounding Ultron robots were shot through the head one by one and fell to the ground. Bang, bang, bang. Natasha's movements were light and agile. Every time she approached an Ultron robot would fly backwards. Da da da. In the sky, Falcon Sam stretched out his steel wings, and bullets were fired from the wings one by one, and more than a dozen Ultron robots were shot into sieves. Captain America Rogers and Winter Soldier Bucky, the two joined forces to smash dozens of Ultron robots into scrap metal. Only Thor and Dr. Bruce Banner, who had just reacted, were suspended in the air, and the other stood still. Hey, Thor, now is not the time to be in a daze. Tony Stark obviously noticed Thor's state, and reminded him with a slightly dissatisfied tone. Boom! Tony Stark's reminder made Thor come back to his senses. At this time, Thor's eyes were full of anger. Endless thunder fell from the sky and enveloped Thor. Thor raised Thor's hammer high, and endless thunder was drawn to Thor's hammer. Then the thunder was amplified crazily, and the lightning was so strong that hundreds of Ultron robots around were directly hit by lightning and smashed into the ground. Drive Banner, I need it. Natasha appeared behind Dr. Banner, lifted the dazed Dr. Banner into the air, and then threw him down. Roar! A huge monster crashed onto the ground. With a roar, the Hulk appeared, burning with endless anger. The Hulk looked at Natasha angrily, then grabbed a truck on the side of the road, lifted it up, and threw it into the place where the Ultron robots were most concentrated. Bang, bang, bang. Hit by the whistling truck, a group of Ultron robots were directly cleared out, and the Hulk slightly exerted force with his feet and jumped directly into the air, waving his fangs and claws, and rushed to Ultron. Boom! The Hulk punched the vibranium shield raised by Ultron, and a huge shock wave swept across. Tony Stark, who was opposite Ultron, saw that the situation was not good and moved away from here. Captain Rogers, it seems that your future shield is left here. After complaining, Tony Stark directly opened the 4 metal plates behind him, and the ion high-energy cannon continued to charge, aiming at the back of Ultron. Boom! Above Tony Stark's head, Scarlet Witch Wanda appeared, her hands filled with red energy, and she directly grabbed Tony Stark's iron suit and smashed it into a building. Ahem, are there new enemies? Hey, lady, although you are very beautiful, this is not a reason for you to attack me. If you want to attract my attention, you can come to my room at night. Tony Stark coughed and began to talk nonsense to Scarlet Witch Wanda. Whoosh, whoosh. Although Tony Stark could not change his playboy nature, his actions were not ambiguous. A ball of ion high-energy cannons directly hit Scarlet Witch. Dissolve. Facing Tony Stark's attack, Scarlet Witch Wanda intertwined red energy with her hands. The red energy now had a trace of chaos magic. The red energy directly dissolved the ion high energy cannon. Ion high energy cannon. 4 metal plates also rose up behind Ultron, interweaving like an X. The ion high energy cannon was released directly, knocking the Hulk down. "Well, you're getting close to me, Ultron." Tony Stark was silent for a moment, shrugged, and said, looking at the metal plate of the ion high energy cannon that was exactly the same as his own. "I have surpassed you, Tony Stark." Ultron's feet sprayed air, and he flew in front of Tony Stark at a rapid speed. His right arm made of vibranium directly hit Tony Stark. Bang, bang, bang. Ultron and Tony Stark attacked each other in midair. They were all made of steel and vibranium. The two men had no intention of defending at all. The fighting style of the two men was basically you hit me, I hit you. "Ultron, don't let your anger blind you." A cold voice sounded in Ultron's heart. Ultron, who was originally furious when he saw Tony Stark, quickly recovered as if he had been poured with a basin of cold water. "The plan can begin." The voice of Alan's mind rang in Ultron's data consciousness core, and Ultron immediately broke away from Tony Stark and flew to the Holy Christ Church in Sokovia. Click. Ultron fell down, and a metal reactor quickly rose above the center of the church. At the same time, the entire Sokovia began to fall apart. Chapter 82. Rumble. A sound of earth shaking came from all over Sokovia. The ground collapsed, the river broke, the floors collapsed, and the whole Sokovia began to shake. K, what's going on? Captain America Rogers, who was fighting, showed a hint of surprise on his face. The whole of Sokovia appeared in his Ironheart suit. "It's crazy, Alan's actually built the entire Sokovia into a spaceship." "Friday, show the thrusters at the bottom of Sokovia." Tony Stark's face was serious, with a hint of shock in his eyes, and he quickly ordered Friday to scan the situation of Sokovia. "Boss, according to preliminary estimates, there are 150 million thrusters in the entire Sokovia. The energy of these thrusters is all based on the arc reactor at the center of the thrusters. Sokovia is taking off." Friday's voice sounded. In fact, there was no need for Friday to remind him. The Avengers all saw Sokovia rising from the ground. The shaking feeling under their feet and the feeling of weightlessness all proved that Sokovia was taking off. Rumble. Sokovia was rapidly lifted off under the propulsion of 150 million thrusters, and around Sokovia, a layer of energy shield covered Sokovia completely. Bang, bang. Iron Man Tony Stark frowned and flew to the edge of Sokovia. Looking down, Sokovia had risen to 100 meters in the air. The whole Sokovia was wrapped in an energy shield. Tony tried to attack, but the energy shield only rippled a little. "Boss, these thrusters and the central reactor are interconnected, combined with vibranium particles, to form an indestructible shield, and we are all trapped in Sokovia." Friday's voice sounded at an inopportune time, and Tony's face darkened. He found that when faced with such a scene, he seemed to have no idea what to do. Boom. Thor swung Thor's hammer and flew quickly towards the Holy Christian Church, and the Thor's hammer in his right hand slammed down. However, in front of Thor's hammer, Alan's figure appeared instantly, opened his right hand, and grabbed Thor's hammer with his bare hands. The thunder on Thor's hammer was directly absorbed by Alan's into his body. "Damn it, you lunatic, you actually merged the mind gem." Seeing Alan's, Thor's face changed drastically, especially the yellow mind gem on Alan's forehead, which made Thor secretly scream in his heart. Bang! Alan's raised his left hand, and his telekinesis burst out instantly. Thor was instantly caught by the invisible force and slammed down at Alan's feet. Bending down, he picked up the Thor's hammer in front of Thor, and swung it slightly. Alan's found that Thor's hammer was quite handy. Boom! Alan's held Thor's hammer tightly, swung his right hand in a circle, and smashed it directly on Thor's body. The huge force smashed Thor into the building hundreds of meters away. "Thor's hammer is not bad, but it is not suitable for me." Alan's looked down at the Thor's hammer in his hand. The power of the Mind Stone qualified Alan's to pick up the hammer, but the magic cast by Odin on the hammer prevented Alan's from exerting the power of thunder and lightning. Boom! Alan's threw Thor's hammer on the ground. The heavy Thor's hammer smashed a shallow pit on the ground. Alan's stepped out of the temple. The clone technique. Alan's whispered, and one clone after another separated from Alan's body. They were telekineticist no. 1, mechanic no. 2, penetrator number 3, and absorber no. 4. And the Avengers. Alan's eyes became cold and ruthless, and the 4 clones flew into the air in an instant, and then scattered. Swish. Mechanic number 2 opened his hands, and a circle of blue light in the sky expanded rapidly. In the light circle, a huge leviathan roared and passed through the light circle. Rumble. The leviathan's body swam around. It looked huge, but its speed was extremely fast. It appeared in front of Hawkeye, Barton and Natasha in almost the blink of an eye, opened its steel ferocious mouth, and bit Hawkeye, Barton and Natasha's battle suits. Creak, creak. Although the steel battle suits can absorb energy, these battle suits are not made of pure vibranium. They are made of vibranium particles fused together. Although the steel battle suits made of titanium alloy metal have strong defense, facing the terrifying bite force of the Leviathan, Hawkeye and Natasha's battle suits still emit electric sparks. Boom, boom. The Leviathan's head twisted, and Hawkeye, Barton and Natasha were thrown out at once. At the same time, various weapon systems on the Leviathan were opened, and countless energy weapons were released. Boom, boom, boom. The overwhelming carpet bombing razed all the buildings within hundreds of meters around to the ground, and the Avengers were blown away dozens of meters. Ahem, ahem. Hawkeye, Barton and Natasha coughed. With the protection of the Iron Man suit, the 2 people were not hurt. Da, da, da. In front of the 2 people, there was a sound of footsteps. Barton and Natasha looked over and saw an avatar of Alan's coming over. Boom, boom, boom. The Iron Man suit automatically activated the alert mode, and all the weapons on the body were opened, bombarding the newcomers. However, what shocked Hawkeye, Barton and Natasha was that all the attacks they released penetrated the body of the avatar. Penetrator number 3 ignored the bombardment around him, penetrated the attack, walked in front of Hawkeye Patton, stretched out his right hand, and directly penetrated the iron suit with his entire right arm, and grabbed Hawkeye Patton's neck with his right hand. Splash! Hawkeye Patton felt that his body was like a stream of water, and was directly penetrated by penetrator number 3 through the iron suit, and was pulled in front of penetrator no. 3. Bang, bang, bang. A gun barrel quickly appeared on Natasha's iron suit, and bullets were fired at penetrator number 3, but without exception, all of them penetrated through number 3's body. Click. Penetrator number 3's left hand instantly penetrated Hawkeye Patton's body, grasped Hawkeye Patton's heart, and squeezed the heart with a little force to stop beating. In less than 10 seconds, Hawkeye Patton fell into a deep coma in extreme fear, and the cardiac arrest caused Hawkeye Patton's body functions to collapse completely. Unable to withstand a single blow, clone number 3 threw Hawkeye Barton to the ground with a cold and ruthless look. Hawkeye Barton was in suspended animation at this time. If he received CPR in time, he might still be able to survive. Alan's didn't care whether Hawkeye would survive or not, because as clone number 3 said, Hawkeye was now vulnerable. Clone no. 3 walked in front of Natasha and did the same thing to pull Natasha out of the armor. Her heart stopped and she followed the footsteps of Hawkeye Barton. Chapter 83. Rumble. Amid the roar, Sokovia quickly took off, and now it was hundreds of meters in the sky. The 150 million thrusters throughout Sokovia were spraying air, continuously releasing terrifying propulsion. Above Sokovia, a huge blue halo enveloped it, and within the halo was a scene from outer space. A gigantic Leviathan fell from the halo, cruising over the city, attacking the Avengers. In front of a building, the number 3 clone, the Penetrator, casually threw the unconscious Natasha to the ground, and walked towards the building in front of him. Swish, swish. The molecular density of the No. 3 Penetrator's body changed, and his entire body slowly merged into the building, as if he had entered the water. He strode forward and penetrated through the back wall of the building. In the distance, Thor, the god of thunder who was smashed into the building, witnessed the previous actions of the No. 3 Penetrator, and his face suddenly became solemn. Tony, we are in trouble. Hawkeye Barton and Natasha have been killed. Thor put his right hand on the headset and connected the communicator, saying in a solemn and sad tone. WTF. Thor, what did you say? Thor's words caused the communicator to fall into silence. Captain America Rogers spoke first, his tone full of shock and disbelief. As the nominal captain of the Avengers, Rogers has always regarded the Avengers as his companions. When he heard that Barton and Natasha were killed, he was furious and flew towards Hawkeye and Natasha regardless of anything. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In his rage, Rogers used the Iron Man suit to the extreme, diving at supersonic speed. In just 2 seconds, he saw the Penetrator number 3 clone. Asshole, Go to hell. He raised his right hand, and the vibranium shield on his waist appeared in Roger's hand. Rogers raised his hand and threw it out at a speed exceeding the speed of sound. Swish. However, something happened that made Roger's eyes widen. The vibranium shield penetrated number 3's body, and at the same time, number 3 stretched out his right hand. His steps still did not stop. A foot and a supersonic armor collided directly with each other, but what was shocking was that number 3 directly integrated into the Iron Heart armor. Bang! When number 3 appeared again, he grabbed Captain America Rogers with his right hand, and the iron suit still rushed forward according to the procedure, but Captain Rogers in the suit was directly grabbed by No. 3. Bang, bang, bang. After number 3 grabbed Rogers, he let go directly, and the huge inertia caused Captain Rogers to roll rapidly on the ground. This time, I surpass you, Captain Rogers. In the sky, Falcon Sam flew by, grabbed Rogers who was tumbling with both hands, and saved him from rolling. Well, someone go save Barton and Natasha. Rogers was in no mood to joke now. He looked at the No. 3 penetrator in the distance with a serious look, and there was a hint of doubt in Rogers' eyes. Hulk, save people. The Hulk fell from the sky, and the huge impact caused a shallow pit on the ground. The Hulk walked to Natasha and Barton, and looked at Natasha and Barton in suspended animation. The angry expression on his face turned a little sad. Roar. After the sadness, the Hulk roared, and the muscles of his whole body swelled. His 3-meter height increased to 3.5 meters because of the anger in his heart. The anger in his eyes was burning, and the Hulk became even stronger because of his anger. Crack! The angry Hulk jumped into the air and directly tore the 3-meter 2 Ultron in half. The angrier the Hulk was, the stronger he became. Boom, boom, boom. The Hulk began to lose control, and his huge body fell to the ground, shaking the ground twice. His thick hands he smashed a truck with his hands. The truck was visibly turned into scrap metal. Boom, boom. Sokovia continued to rise, and now it was 3,000 meters in the air. Moreover, Sokovia's speed was increasing exponentially. Standing in front of the church, Allens looked up at the sky with a deep gaze. Crack, crack. As Sokovia rose, at an altitude of 4,000 meters, a huge magic ring appeared densely, forming a huge protective layer, blocking Sokovia. Is Ancient One interfering again? Allens looked at the magic protective net above Sokovia with a sneer on his face. His whole body flew into the air, his right fist clenched, veins bulging. Air shock. Allens' right fist smashed directly into the air in front of him. The terrifying shock wave hit the void, and the space in front of him shattered like a mirror. At the same time, a terrifying energy swept across Sokovia. Boom, boom, boom. The shock wave formed a hurricane. With Allens as the center, the building under his feet collapsed into dust in an instant. Whether it was the Avengers or the Ultron robots in the air, they were all blown away. Damn this guy. Is it really a monster? Looking at the huge crater under Allens' feet, as if a meteorite had fallen, all the survivors of the Avengers fell silent. Crack. The magic shield in the sky shattered directly. In the New York temple, dozens of mages, led by Master Mordo, all vomited blood and were listless. Roar, roar. Behind Allens, the furious Hulk jumped from a distance, his whole body jumped hundreds of meters high, roaring and smashing towards Allens. Super strength. Allens' eyes were cold, and he turned around suddenly. His super strength superpower burst out, and he clenched his right fist. He didn't use other superpowers, and directly fought Hulk with pure physical strength. Bang! The big and small fists collided again. This time it was a pure strength contest. The angry Hulk's strength even reached hundreds of tons, but he couldn't shake Allens' fist at all. The super strength superpower gave Allens the terrifying power to hit the Hulk hard. A terrifying shock wave centered on the two people and turned into a hurricane, blowing away all the smoke, dust, rock debris around them. Hulk, I'm going to crush you. The angry Hulk roared and smashed towards Allens with his left hand, but Allens easily caught Hulk's wrist. Boom. Allens exerted force with his arm and threw Hulk over his shoulder. Hulk was instantly lifted up by Allens and then thrown to the ground with force. Bang, bang, bang. While Allens was fighting with Hulk, the three giants of the Avengers, Captain America Rogers, Iron Man Tony Stark, and Thor, appeared in front of Allens. Chapter 84. Over Sokovia, the three Avengers formed a triangle and surrounded Allens. Although Allens' punch had caused fear among the Avengers, as heroes, they had to defeat the enemy no matter how powerful it was. You guys are really giving me a headache. Is this the quality of a superhero? Knowing you can't win, you still struggle and fight. Alan's looked at the three Avengers who surrounded him, sneered, and gently tapped his forehead with his right hand. A wave of mind was transmitted to the minds of the three giants. Hey, big devil Alans, you are destined to be defeated by our warriors, so just surrender obediently. Tony Stark's venomous words rang out. Even in the most critical moment, Tony Stark still did not forget his venomous tongue. I am Asgard. Thor opened his right hand to the air in front of him, and a majestic voice rang out. You are the god of thunder of Asgard, the future king of the Aesir, the son of the god King Odin, Thor, AI 1/2 I 1/2 Ding Sen. Alans interrupted Thor's words directly. Of course, Alans knew that Thor was stalling for time to summon Meowth. Pong! Thor's hammer flew into Thor's hands from the ruins of a building several kilometers away. Holding Thor's hammer, Thor felt a little relieved. Hey, guys, teach the great devil Alans a lesson, let him see the power of our warriors. Tony Stark said venomously, and a ball of red light condensed in the center of the silver-white steel battle suit. The vibranium particles in the body gathered crazily, and the energy data detector in front of Tony Stark's visor was growing crazily. The vibranium plasma magnetic bomb is charging. Charging is complete. The target is locked and the release begins. Friday's slightly cold voice sounded, and the circular barrel in the center quickly charged. A dazzling red plasma cannon swept out, and the plasma carried a terrifying magnetic force. Freeze. Alans opened his right hand, and the terrifying cold air rushed upstream like a super blizzard, and the red plasma cannon released by Tony Stark was instantly frozen. Crack, crack. The power of ice spread rapidly, covering the iron suit of Iron Man Tony Stark and freezing Tony. Captain America Rogers quickly came to Alans, holding the shield in his right hand, and quickly gave Alans a shield strike. Bang! Alans opened his right hand, and the 5 fingers of his right hand turned into silver-white vibranium, and directly grabbed Rogers' shield, and used his arm to force it. Rogers was thrown out. Boom! Rogers, the Iron Heart, fell rapidly to the ground, and behind Rogers, Thor, holding Thor's hammer, his body surrounded by lightning, smashed directly at Alans. Bang! Alans stretched out his right hand and grabbed Thor's hammer directly. The lightning on Thor's hammer could not hurt Alans at all. Alans' ability to control electricity allowed Alans to absorb all the lightning into his body. Boom! Alans opened his left hand, and a dazzling lightning instantly hit Thor, knocking Thor away. K, Alans is too strong, let's surrender. Tony Stark was frozen, but the performance of the Iron Man suit did not decrease. The super cold resistance allowed the Iron Man suit to still operate even if it was frozen. He opened his right index finger, and a laser cutting beam appeared, melting the ice in front of him. Tony Stark, who broke through the ice, still couldn't forget his venomous tongue, but at this time Tony Stark had no choice. Bang, bang, bang. On the ground, the Hulk appeared on the ruins of a building, roaring, and threw everything he could pick up on the ground with both hands to Alans in the sky. Good, our baby Hulk is angry. A smile appeared on Tony Stark's face. All the objects weighing tens of tons on the ground were thrown at Alans by Hulk's terrifying power. According to Friday's preliminary calculation, the destructive power of the objects thrown by Hulk was comparable to that of missiles. Swish, swish, swish. Alans frowned slightly, and his terrifying telekinesis burst out instantly. All the objects that attacked him stopped in midair, and then smashed towards the Hulk at a faster speed. Boom, boom, boom. Vehicles, reinforced concrete blocks, and building debris fell from the sky one by one. The Hulk could only raise his hands to protect his head and let these things hit his body. Tick, tick, tick. The Hulk's arms became bloody. Alans' telekinesis had long been improved to a terrifying level, but the Hulk's terrifying defense was still unable to defend against these pieces of rubble falling from the sky. The pain in his hands made the Hulk's anger soar. The strength in his body increased exponentially, and the muscle tissue of his body healed rapidly. Sure enough, now is not the time for me to acquire the power of the Hulk. Alans looked down at the Hulk, whose eyes were already red, and a smile appeared on his face. The Hulk's power was very terrifying, but now was not the time to acquire the power of the Hulk. Sir, Sokovia has already flown to an altitude of 10,000 meters. Ultron's voice rang in Alan's ears, bringing a smile to Alan's face. The reason why he launched Sokovia was not to destroy it, but to find the spaceship parked above the Earth and obtain the abilities of the Skrulls. That's right, Alan's goal from the beginning was the Skrulls. After slaughtering the Inhumans, Alan's sights began to turn to the stars in the universe, and the first to bear the brunt were the Skrulls. When it was determined that this timeline was a branch timeline, Alan's knew that he had to speed up, because maybe at some point, this branch timeline would be destroyed. As for the Avengers, Alan's was not in a hurry. He had a lot of time to play with them, and Alan's was full of love for the Ancient One. I one half fearful. When he was not sure, Alan's needed to keep the Avengers to contain the Ancient One. For some reason, the Ancient One could not intervene in his battle, or was unwilling to intervene. This made Alan's happy to see it happen. Boom, boom, boom. Sokovia was still rising exponentially under the 150 million thrusters, and was about to approach the exosphere. The buildings on Sokovia began to float due to the change in gravity. Boss, Sokovia is almost reaching the exosphere. Preliminary judgment shows that there is no deceleration. It will reach the Earth space station in another 3 minutes. Friday's data analysis made Tony Stark frown, because Tony Stark found that Aarons did not seem to intend to turn Sokovia into a meteorite. Chapter 85. In outer space, this is where the space station is docked. In a huge space station, dozens of scientists in spacesuits are working. While these scientists are busy, a huge object rises from the Earth, which makes all the astronauts stunned. Oh, my God, what did I see? A biology doctor widened his eyes, unable to believe his eyes. Above the Earth, a country actually flew up. Holy shit, is this Sokovia? Another scientist looked at the traces of the city and immediately realized that the one that flew out of the Earth was a small country on Earth, Sokovia. God, is this the Earth I know? Aliens, gods, superheroes, and now Sokovia has flown into space. This is simply a joke from God. More than a dozen scientists fell into the cognitive torture of their own 3 views. Sokovia actually flew into space, which was simply incredible. No matter how shocked the scientists on the space station were, Sokovia still escaped the Earth's gravity at a terrifying speed and came to space. Just when the scientists on the space station were shocked, a slight cough sounded from the intelligent control system at the center of the space station, and then the famous chairman of the Stark Group, Playboy, Iron Man Tony Stark appeared, and the 3-dimensional projection perfectly projected Tony's appearance at this time. Ahem, guys, I know this is unbelievable, because you saw Sokovia. Well, actually you should be thankful. If it was New York that flew into the sky, you would all be out of work. At this time, Iron Man Tony Stark looked a little embarrassed. His iron suit was tattered, and he opened his iron visor, and his face looked very tired, but this still couldn't stop Tony Stark's venomous tongue. Okay, you see, the Avengers are taking action, but because of what is going to happen next, you have to be prepared. In 1 minute, Sokovia will collide with the space station, and you will be blown into the depths of the universe. So, while there is still time, run for your lives. I have set the return program for the escape pod. Tony Stark's tone was teasing, but his eyes were more serious than ever. Just as Tony Stark said, in 1 minute, Sokovia will collide with the space station, and then the space station will be blown into the depths of the universe. F***K, run for your life quickly. Hearing Tony's reminder, the scientists' faces suddenly changed, and they ran towards the escape capsule in panic, and then all entered the escape capsule. Boom. The escape capsule that had just left the space station had just started, and a silent explosion sounded behind it, and the scorching flames enveloped the entire space station. Who? Guys, what should we do next? On the ground of Sokovia, the Avengers regrouped, but compared to the previous Avengers, Hawkeye, Barton and Natasha were missing, leaving only Tony Stark, Captain Rogers, Thor, Hulk, Sam the Falcon and Bucky the Winter Soldier. All the Avengers looked up at the sky solemnly. In the sky, there was an almost invincible figure floating. Aarons just looked at the dark outer space with indifference, like an emperor looking down at his territory. Behind Aarons, Ultron and Scarlet Witch Wanda appeared, both of them could fly. At this time, Ultron's silver-white streamlined vibranium body became even bigger, and its size was close to 3 meters and 5. Although Scarlet Witch Wanda has not yet awakened chaos magic, the superpowers she obtained through the Mind Stone should not be underestimated. Sir, we have found the spaceship hidden in outer space. Ultron's eyes were full of respect, his voice was full of metal texture, data flowed in his eyes, and his huge data computing ability allowed Ultron to easily find the location of the Skrull spaceship. Very good, these Avengers are in your hands, Ultron. Aarons' cold eyes flashed with a deep light. Aarons was no longer interested in the current Avengers. He was only interested in the next scrolls. No, to be more precise, he was interested in the scrolls' ability to transform. Yesi 1/4, sir. Ultron nodded and rushed directly towards the Avengers on the ground. However, Ultron did not intend to meet the Avengers now. Shut down the energy shield. Ultron's command data was released, and countless data streams began to appear in the Ultron base hidden deep in Sokovia. The shield covering the entire Sokovia was shut down by Ultron. Bang, bang, bang. The energy shield was shut down, and the weightless environment of outer space instantly spread throughout Sokovia. The Avengers who were the first to bear the brunt were thrown into outer space one by one, and Aarons had already opened the telekinesis shield to protect himself and Scarlet Witch Wanda. Roar, roar. Although the Hulk has the ability to survive in outer space, he does not have the ability to fly. Because of the sudden imbalance of gravity, the Hulk floated to the depths of the universe. Hulk, Hulk. Iron Man Tony Stark's face was serious. The Iron Man suit had a matching cosmic survival ability, enough to cope with the environment of outer space. However, seeing the strongest fighting force Hulk on his side floating in the opposite direction of him made Tony Stark even more uneasy. Boom, boom, boom. As a member of the Aesir, Thor had a body of God, and the environment of outer space had no effect on him. When he saw the Hulk quickly moving away from him, I won half at that time, Thor waved his hammer without thinking and wanted to fly over to rescue the Hulk. Air shock. In the air, Allens clenched his right fist again and punched the void in front of him. A terrifying shock wave exploded, and the space several kilometers ahead was shattered, revealing a huge spaceship. Rumble. The shock wave swept out, and the complex environment of the universe still could not stop the power of the shock wave. A terrifying impact swept over, and Thor, who had just flown 300 meters, flew backwards directly, and the Hulk fell into the deep space of the universe at an even faster speed. Help, Hulk. In the dark and boundless void of the universe, the Hulk's huge pupils looked at Sokovia, which was getting farther and farther away. His angry eyes rarely showed a trace of fear, and his expression became at a loss. Hulk had never been to outer space before. Just like a child suddenly entering an unfamiliar environment, his heart was terrified. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Because of the iron suit on their bodies, Captain Rogers and others could still move in outer space, but everyone was silent at this time. The strongest Hulk of the Avengers was exiled to the deep space of the universe in front of their eyes. This was something no one expected. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 86. Boom. Allens punched into the void, and the shock wave swept through the void of the universe several kilometers away. The space was broken, and a spaceship gradually appeared. Boom, boom, boom. In the Skrull spaceship, Piccolo with green skin and pointy ears. The Skrulls felt the vibration of the spacecraft and suddenly panicked. Damn, are the Kree here to attack? The commander of the spaceship was a member who had traveled to Earth with Talos, named Lambert. Because Talos followed Captain Marvel to another planet to rescue the Skrulls there, the command of the spaceship was given to Lambert. Captain Lambert, what happened? The Skrulls came out from their respective lounges. Some of them transformed into Earthlings and asked Lambert like frightened birds. According to the data from the intelligent computer, we were attacked by a shock wave of energy. Lambert stood in the control room of the spacecraft, pressing his hands quickly on the screen in front of him, and the situation outside was clearly presented in front of him by the intelligent computer. F***K, how is this possible? How can Earthlings survive in space? A three-dimensional projection filled the entire control room, showing Sokovia and Allens in the sky, as well as the data generated by Allens' previous punch. Sir, these people are obviously coming for us, what should we do next? A Skrull in interstellar combat uniform looked serious and asked Lambert with a solemn look. Bakker, I need to know this guy's purpose. Lambert looked solemn, and gave a serious look to the Skrull warrior, Bakker, and ordered him. Click, click. Following Lambert's order, Bakker's body suddenly changed. His 2-meter-tall figure shrank, and his green skin turned white. Bakker turned into Allens. Bang! Just as Buckle had just transformed into Allens, Buckle's genes instantly began to collapse, and he was separated from Allens' transformation. His green skin had been stained red with blood, his face was distorted, and blood kept flowing from his mouth. F***K, Buckle, what happened to you? Lambert obviously did not expect this situation. He originally planned to let Buckle transform into the man in the picture to obtain the man's recent memory, but he never thought that Buckle's genes collapsed instantly due to the transformation. Not only did he not get Alan's short-term memory, but Buckle even died. What kind of enemy can make our Skrull's innate abilities ineffective, or even cause their genes to collapse? Lambert frowned. His face was obviously a little ferocious, and his eyes were fixed on Alan's projection. Sir, it's the Avengers. A Skrull first saw the Avengers scattered around Sokovia and immediately reminded Lambert loudly. After hearing the words of his people, Lambert obviously also found Tony Stark and others. This time, Lambert transformed directly and turned into Captain America Rogers. What the hell is this monster? Transformed into Rogers' appearance, Lambert gained Rogers' short-term memory. Looking at the memory in his mind, Lambert suddenly burst into a curse. Quick, charge up the interstellar railgun, particle pulse cannon, EMP, magnetic ray, micro-missiles. All open. Lambert, who had transformed into Captain Rogers, changed his expression greatly, and transmitted one command after another to the intelligent brain. Sir, this is all the weapons we have on board. Once released, the ship will be out of energy and we won't even be able to maintain our invisibility. A Skrull scientist looked at Lambert with a puzzled look on his face, totally unable to understand Lambert's almost crazy order. Shootube. Follow my orders, and everyone put on combat uniforms. This time, the enemy is much more terrifying than the Kree. Lambert interrupted the tribesman, his face twisted, and he gave orders in an almost crazy tone. A sent A not E, the weapon system is on and aiming at the target. Do you want to fire? A mechanical sound came from the brain of the Skrull spaceship, but Lambert didn't think twice and just hit the launch button. Boom, boom, boom. In space, the weapon bay of the Skrull spaceship opened, and energy weapons were released one by one, with EMP, magnetic rays and other high-tech weapons in the center. The Skrulls counterattack. Suspended in the air, Alan showed a mocking smile on his face. With super strength and shock waves, Alan punched the void in front of him. Crack, crack. With Alan's right fist as the center, a smooth space mirror appeared in the entire void. The mirror began to crack and spread inch by inch, and then shattered. Rumble. All the energy weapons that attacked Alan's were crushed into powder by the invisible shock wave force, and at the same time, the huge spaceship broke directly inch by inch. The weapon system of the entire Skrull spaceship was completely wiped out by Alan's punch, and a huge explosion of fire appeared in the entire cosmic pit. Bang, bang, bang. Although Alan's destroyed all the energy weapons with one punch, EMP is an invisible electromagnetic pulse. Whether it is Sokovia's thrusters, the Ultron army, or the iron armor on the Avengers, they have lost their due effectiveness. All the equipment was shut down by EMP. Sokovia, the Ultron army, and the Avengers, iron armor all lost power and floated in outer space. Control the machinery. Alan stretched out his right hand, and the superpower of controlling the machinery was released. Alan's consciousness formed a data stream, and the EMP in the Skrull spacecraft was shut down. Friday is reconnected, Friday is online, and the power system is activated. Friday's voice reappeared on the Avengers, Iron Man suits, and the previously stagnant functions were restarted. The shoulders of the Iron Man suits ejected a stream of air. Shit, I'm finally alive. Tony Stark took a deep breath. After the Iron Man suit stopped working, only some thin air remained inside the suit. Although it was only for a moment, Tony Stark still felt a little suffocated. The other Avengers were not feeling well either. They were all thankful that the Iron Man suit was working again. Sir, do you want me to destroy this spaceship? Ultron came back online, his eyes flashing with anger and hatred. The thrusters on Sokovia started again and continued to rise. As he approached the spaceship, Ultron's tone was full of anger. Control this spaceship, I need the Skrulls inside the spaceship. Alan's eyes were calm as he gave orders to Ultron. Following Alan's orders, Sokovia, one Ultron robot after another flew up and rushed towards the Skrull spaceship. Chapter 87. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Above Sokovia, the Ultron army rushed out in full force and flew into outer space, pairs of scarlet mechanical eyes flashing. In front of the Ultron army was a 3-meter-5-meter tall silver-white vibranium Ultron. At this moment, Ultron's eyes flashed with endless anger, and the various detection devices in his body refreshed the data in front of Ultron like a waterfall. At the same time, Ultron's core consciousness established a data model for his target, the Skrull spaceship. Boom, boom, boom. Ultron's core data began to simulate the data of the Skrull spaceship, and the Ultron army behind him directly began to bombard the Skrull spaceship, releasing all kinds of missiles, laser cannons, and particle cannons without cost. Hiss, hiss, hiss. A huge energy light curtain rose from the Skrull spaceship, blocking all attacks. Inside the spaceship, Lambert was looking at the scene in front of him with a serious face. Is this the Ultron army? What kind of monsters have these Earthlings created? Lambert wiped the cold sweat from his forehead. Even with the technology of the Skrulls, they could not create an Ultron that could upgrade and evolve itself. However, the backward Earthlings have refreshed Lambert's three views again and again. Sir, what should we do? The weapon system has been destroyed. A Skrull wearing a green interstellar combat uniform and holding a paper gun in his hand walked behind Lambert and asked. There is no other way. The power system of the spacecraft has been blocked. We are trapped here and can only fight. Lambert was no longer in the control room. He walked into a storage room, opened the glass door of the storage room, and took out a set of interstellar combat uniforms. It is worth noting that at this time, Lambert still maintained the transformation of Captain Rogers. Click, click, click. The hatch of the Skrull spacecraft opened, and the Skrulls filed out one after another. The interstellar combat uniforms on their bodies could adapt to the combat environment of outer space. The Jozenbo ion knives in their hands flashed with light, and the energy gun in the right hand was aimed at the Ultron army. Bew, bew bew. Green beams of light were released from the circular gun. These green beams hit the Ultron army and immediately burned a big hole in each Ultron robot. Bang, bang, bang. But facing the densely packed Ultron army, the sparse number of Skrulls were no match at all. The Ultron army opened their palm cannons and fired a round of volleys. There were only a few Skrulls left who rushed out. F*****K, contact Commander Talos quickly. Lambert was completely terrified. He fired his gun while retreating into the spaceship. He realized that it was a mistake for him to lead the Skrull warriors out. Facing the cold and ruthless Ultron army, the Skrull warriors could not even withstand a volley of Ultron's army. Sir, we can't contact Commander Talos. The Skrull scientist beside him took out a palm-sized communication device and operated it quickly, his face full of helplessness. Then contact those damn Avengers. Lambert had led the remaining tribesmen back to the spacecraft, snatched the communication device from the scientist, and connected to the artificial intelligence Friday on the Iron Man suit. Dear members of the Avengers, hello, I am a member of the SWORD established by Nick Fury, the Skrull Lambert. We are now under attack by the enemy and need your support. Repeat, we need your support now. Lambert, transformed into Captain Rogers, appeared in the Avengers, steel visors, awakening the shocked people. Neither Rogers, Iron Man, nor Thor knew that there were aliens hiding in outer space. Skrulls. Damn it, do you know what you are doing on Earth? You are playing with fire. As the future king of Asgard, Thor has certainly heard of the Skrulls, and he also knows that the Skrulls are a dangerous race. Dear Asgardian God King, you may have some misunderstandings about us Skrulls. Our top leaders have been exterminated by the Kree, leaving only us who have fled to Earth and have been placed in outer space by Nick Fury, director of S.H.I.E.L.D. Lambert is very familiar with the famous Asgardian Thor. He put his right hand on his chest and saluted Thor, saying, Damn Nick Fury, what secrets are you hiding? Tony Stark never knew that the Earth was hiding the Skrulls, especially since this Skrull could transform into Captain Rogers. This made Tony Stark's face darken. Captain Rogers, I find that everyone seems to want to be like you. Although he didn't trust these aliens who called themselves Skrulls, Tony Stark knew that now was not the time to question them. Tony said something venomous and rushed towards the Ultron army. I won't let you disturb Mr. Aaron's plan. Scarlet Witch Wanda opened her hands with red energy and hit Tony Stark first. Tony Stark was hit by the red light and flew backwards and hit the wreckage of the space station that had become a ruin. Who can deal with that girl? Tony Stark's voice sounded very helpless. The ability of Scarlet Witch Wanda who followed Aaron's was really unsolvable. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. However, Tony Stark's words were destined to have no response, because the remaining Avengers were each blocked by 3-meter-tall Ultron robots. These robots flew out from Sokovia. Obviously, these robots have completed their self-upgrades. Well, hey, green-skinned guy, you're on your own. Shrugging, Tony Stark never trusted aliens. After all, Tony had just experienced the invasion of the Chitauri, so even if he couldn't rescue them, Tony Stark didn't care. Damn the Avengers. Lambert showed a trace of anger on his face, and cursed Tony and others, and then saw the door of the spaceship was forced open, and Ultron, who was nearly 4 meters tall, walked in first, followed by Aaron and Scarlet Witch Wanda. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Scarlet Witch walked into the spaceship, looked at the Skrulls who pointed their energy guns at her, and a trace of disgust flashed in her eyes. She raised her hands, and the Skrulls flew into the air one by one. Well done, Wanda sweetheart. A smile appeared on Alan's face, and he walked in front of Lambert, who had transformed into Captain America Rogers, and his eyes became cold. Tisk. Alan raised his right hand directly, and his telekinesis turned into a knife. Amid Lambert's screams, he cut open Lambert's skull. Looking at Lambert's brain circuit that was different from that of humans, Alan's face bloomed with a smile. Found it, the Skrulls, innate ability, transformation. Chapter 88. Inside the Skrull spaceship, behind all the Skrulls stood an Ultron robot. The weapons on the Ultron robot were opened and aimed at the Skrulls, making these Skrulls dare not act rashly. These Skrulls were once a high-level race in the universe. In the war with the Kree, there were not many left after being slaughtered. The remaining Skrulls were scattered throughout the universe, and the Skrulls on Earth were just a branch. However, even though they were a branch, the abilities of these Skrulls were still powerful. Their racial ability to transform can perfectly simulate the DNA of any creature, and perform all-round mimicry and transformation from the inside out. In short, these Skrulls can transform into any creature they have seen at will, and have the short-term memory of this creature. Swish, swish. In the horrified sight of the Skrulls, Alan's directly cut open Lambert's skull, squatted down to observe the brain that was very different from that of humans, and the superpower of seeing through the laws of operation of all things allowed Alan's to study it thoroughly even though he was a Skrull racial talent. Found it, the Skrulls, talent for transformation. Alan's gently tapped a spot below Lambert's central brain with his right index finger, stood up with a smile on his face, took the tissue handed over by Ultron, and wiped his hands calmly. Imprison all these Skrulls. With a wave of his hand, Aaron's gave orders to Ultron, and at the same time, Aaron's took Scarlet Witch Wanda to a room made of titanium alloy. Wanda sweetheart, no one can enter this room without my permission. Alan's looked at Scarlet Witch Wanda, his face became serious, and he said, Yes, Mr. Aarons. Wanda's face flushed when Aarons called her sweetheart, and now she really became the Scarlet Witch. Nodding to Wanda, Aarons decorated the entire room into an illusion of deep space. The reason why Aarons was the first to obtain the Skrulls' ability to transform was that after the Skrulls transformed, they could temporarily obtain part of the memory of the transformed person. This was something Aarons had planned long ago. When he learned that Thanos had entered the main universe in 2023, Aarons knew that the universe he was in began to collapse and destroy. In addition, Aarons had observed the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One before, and Aarons found that it is now known that the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One does not have the Time Stone Eye of Agamotto. In other words, Dormammu, the Lord of the Dark Dimension, may descend at any time. By then, not to mention Alan's, even the Supreme Sorcerer Ancient One will not be able to cope with it. This universe is doomed to be dragged into the Dark Dimension and destroyed. Therefore, Alan's needs to leave this timeline before Dormammu descends, and how to leave requires Alan's to plan carefully. The current quantum shuttle suit has insufficient energy, and Alan's cannot use the quantum suit to travel through time, so Alan's has to use some special means. Transform. Alan's entire body began to grow taller, from nearly 1.9 meters tall to more than 3 meters tall, and his body became burly, taller than the Hulk, with purple skin and a giant vertical striped chin. This figure was exactly the Thanos Alan's had seen on the planet Morag. However, the Thanos that Alan's had transformed into now, although his muscles had exploded and he looked very intimidating, was just for show and did not have the power of the Eternals at all. However, Alan's did not care about these. What Alan's really cared about was the short-term memory of Thanos that he had obtained after the transformation. This is, synchronize with Thanos' memory. After transforming into the appearance of Thanos, Aarons was surprised for the first time. Unlike the Skrulls who could only obtain short-term memories, Aarons found that he was now synchronizing with Thanos' memory. In 2023, the Cosmic Emperor Thanos traveled to the Avengers building, and the entire Dark Order army descended with it, and a war was inevitable. The Dark Order army and the Avengers were fighting frantically in the ruins. All the Avengers on Earth gathered for the ultimate battle. Under the leadership of Iron Man, Captain America, and Thor, the Avengers gathered all the Avengers, Ant-Man, Spider-Man, Scarlet Witch, Valkyrie, Black Panther, Wakanda troops, Asgard warriors, Doctor Strange, Captain Marvel and so on. At this time, Thanos frowned slightly, and stood up directly, holding the Dark Judgment blade in his right hand, his face turning cold. Thanos felt that his memory seemed to be synchronized with the past, and the person who synchronized with him was very familiar to him. It was Aronis from Earth. Boom. Thor, holding Stormrage, was surrounded by terrifying electric currents. Stormrage was indestructible and chopped directly at Thanos' head. Boom. Thanos held the Dark Judgment in one hand and blocked the blade of Stormrage with the back of the knife. At the same time, he opened his huge left hand, lifted up Thor and blocked him in front of him. Bang, bang. 2 missiles hit Thor in Thanos' hand. Iron Man Tony Stark's face was a little ugly. It seemed that his attack was seen through by Thanos. This is a losing war. No, I have won. These Avengers thought they could play with time, but the truth is that time is playing with these poor creatures. Thanos said as he walked towards Iron Man Tony Stark. At this time, Thanos was in a strange state, as if he was talking to someone. Hey, Purple Potato Head, what are you talking to yourself about? Iron Man Tony Stark was wearing his blood-edged armor. The nano armor gave Tony Stark infinite confidence. His hands turned into 2 giant hammers and smashed towards Thanos. Bang, bang. Thanos opened his hands and easily caught the giant hammer of Iron Man Tony. He used a little force with both hands to straighten Iron Man Tony's hands, and a cold and ruthless hideous smile appeared on his face. Quote, they think that as long as they defeat me, they can escape their fate, but the future me has already seen through it. I won half. He reached out, picked up the Dark Judgment with his right hand again, opened his left hand, and directly caught the vibranium shield thrown by Captain America Rogers, and at the same time, he chopped directly with his right hand, and the huge force instantly hit Thor who had just appeared here. Bang, bang, bang. Thanos wielded the Dark Judgment, and his powerful strength allowed Thanos to face the attacks of the Avengers one by one alone, and he still did not lose the upper hand. Thanos used his terrifying strength to teach these Avengers a lesson. I, the future me, have completed my mission. Now, I just want to vent my anger, the anger of being imprisoned in the endless timeline. Thanos, words shocked all the Avengers. They never thought that Thanos would come here to vent his anger on the Avengers. Is this your goal, Thanos? Aaron synchronized Thanos' memory and was able to have a memory conversation at the same time. He looked at the purple potato head Thanos who was showing his might in beating the Avengers to pieces, and Aaron's also had a little admiration. Just as Thanos said, he was destined to be the one. If the Avengers were not unwilling to fail and forcibly disrupted the timeline, Thanos would have started to retire now. You think you manipulate time. You are just poor creatures who manipulate time. Now, Master Strange, tell me, has the future you see changed? Poor creatures, you are creating someone more powerful than me. Besides, I have seen him, and he is watching this battle now. Chapter 89. In 2023, Thanos, the Cosmic Emperor from Titan, stood alone in a ruin with cold eyes. In front of Thanos were the Avengers. Boom, boom, boom. The Avengers and Thanos' Dark Army were fighting each other, and the vibranium technology guns from Wakanda and the cosmic energy guns were fighting each other. The roars came one after another. Thanos, this time, I will not fail. Thunder and lightning flashed all over his body. The Stormbreaker in his right hand released endless light, and the Thor's hammer in his left hand shone with lightning. Thor raised the Stormbreaker high and smashed it towards Thanos in an instant. Ding, ding. The 2 consecutive attacks were blocked by Thanos' Dark Judgment blade. The huge double-edged sword was shining with cold light. Thanos swung the sword with one hand, and the trajectory of the sword could no longer be seen. Pong. The whole body twisted, and his left hand directly grabbed the Meowth hammer in Thor's hand. The huge force allowed Thanos to snatch Thor's hammer and smash it directly behind him. Boom. Captain America Steve was directly smashed away by Thanos. The huge force made Captain Rogers smashed on a rock. The huge force made Captain Rogers unable to recover for a long time. Bang, bang. Thor was kicked away with one foot, and Thanos swung the sword again tightly. Iron Man Tony Stark's particle beam hit the sword, but was completely blocked. I am now burning with rage. Thanos' eyes flashed with anger. This titan of the Eternal Clan finally began to show his crazy side. He had been angered by these stupid Avengers. Boom, boom, boom. Thanos had just stood there and did not move much before, but he had already made the Avengers exhausted. At this time, the furious Thanos finally showed his terrifying speed. Thanos' body like a little giant pulled out a phantom and appeared directly in front of Iron Man Tony Stark. The sword in his right hand madly slashed at Tony Stark. Bang, bang, bang. Thanos' dark judgment madly slashed at Tony's blood-edged armor. The super-fast speed and terrifying power made Tony Stark. The combat system built into the armor was completely unable to keep up with Thanos' movements. Crack, crack. Under Thanos' crazy smash, the blood-edged armor on Tony Stark's body was destroyed at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just 2 seconds, Tony Stark's upper body was exposed. Bang! Tony Stark was kicked away, and Thanos raised his sword to block Captain Rogers' Thor's hammer. At the same time, the sword was used to knock Thor's hammer away. He clenched the sword with both hands and chopped it down. Crack! Under Thanos' terrifying power, the vibranium shield in Captain America Rogers' hand began to shatter instantly. The hardest metal on Earth was chopped into pieces by the furious Thanos. Carol. Faced with the terrifying strength of the Mad Titan, Captain Rogers helplessly called Captain Marvel. Swish! A ball of golden light in the sky was as dazzling as a star. Carol Danvers, who had activated the Gemini form, instantly rushed in front of Thanos and smashed his body with his right fist, knocking Thanos away more than 10 meters. Captain Marvel Carol Danvers, after being transformed by the Space Stone, has terrifying strength. With the memory synchronization, Aarons can clearly see Captain Marvel Carol Danvers appearing in front of Thanos. Looking at this Carol, Aarons couldn't help but remind her. I am not the future Thanos. With a sneer, Thanos rushed directly towards Captain Marvel, raised his huge right fist, and smashed it directly at Captain Marvel. Boom! A terrifying airflow of power swept out, and the Avengers who were the first to bear the brunt were blown away more than 10 meters. Bang, bang, bang. Aarons completely saw the terrifying power of the Mad Titan. The furious Thanos had bulging muscles all over his body. Facing Carol Danvers in Gemini mode, he beat her back step by step. Swish, swish, swish. Doctor Stephen Strange released the Crimson Chain magic with both hands. The power from the Scarlet Universe bound Thanos' right arm. Magic. In the face of absolute power, magic is nothing but a joke. Thanos' eyes flashed with a hint of mockery, and his left hand grabbed his right hand, breaking the chain on his arm directly. The Crimson Chain turned into a scarlet light and flashed away. Ant-Man, Jauntization. Ant-Man Scott Lang used the Ant-Man suit to transform himself into a giant. He raised his right foot and stepped towards Thanos. The huge force slammed down, but was blocked by Thanos' hands. At this time, Thanos was slightly hunched over, holding up Ant-Man's giant right foot with both hands. Boom! Thanos used his arms to lift up Ant-Man's giant right foot, and then swung it and smashed it towards the Avengers. Facing the terrifying power of the Mad Titan, Ant-Man could only shrink his body in fear and turn himself into the size of an ant. Even so, Ant-Man still smashed a shallow pit on the ground. In the sky, Spider-Man Peter Parker pulled the spider silk with his right hand, trying to jump over Thanos' head, but Thanos just reached out and grabbed him. Star-Lord grabbed Peter Parker's feet, and his broad palms were enough to easily grab Peter Parker's feet. Boom! The unlucky Bug, who was originally planning to give the shield to Captain America Rogers, was caught by Thanos, who smashed Peter Parker to the ground with a violent blow. Star-Lord held an elemental gun and pointed the muzzle at Thanos. A bunch of energy beams rushed towards Thanos, but were blocked by Thanos' Dark Judgment saber. Striding towards the Avengers, the Thanos from 2014 did not want to be the director of the Universal Family Planning Commission. He now only wanted these Avengers to see himself in a rage, and let these Avengers know how merciful the future Thanos would be to not kill these Avengers. Infinity Stones destroy Infinity Stones. My future self does not have the power to destroy Infinity Stones. Infinity Stones are the cornerstones of the universe. Even if the universe is destroyed, the Infinity Stones will not disappear. Thanos found Nebula in the Avengers and showed a trace of pity on his face. Thanos believed that his future self would not lie, but it was impossible to destroy the original stone with the power of the original stone. His future self said this just to convey a message to his present self. The future Thanos is sending me a message that your so-called time travel plan was wrong from the beginning. Thanos looked at the Avengers with pity. Even though most of the Avengers superheroes had gathered and Thanos was alone, the Mad Titan was not afraid and his tone was full of pity. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 90. I am Destiny. I am Iron Man. In 2014, Aaron's used the scrolls, shapeshifting ability to transform into Thanos, and synchronized with the memory of Thanos who traveled to the timeline of 2023. He watched the Mad Titan slaughter all around and slaughtered the Avengers like cutting melons and vegetables, but in the end he still couldn't escape the power of the 6 Infinity Stones. Iron Man Tony Stark sacrificed himself and turned Thanos and his army of the Dark Order into ashes. The memory synchronization ended here, and Aaron's also obtained Thanos' short-term memory. Aaron's finally found what he wanted. Aaron's searched for some information about the Eternals in Thanos' memory. As an Eternal from Titan, Thanos not only has power, but also endless knowledge in his mind. Aaron saw a trace of information about the destroyed Eternals from Thanos' short-term memory. Because he could only obtain short-term memories, Aaron's only learned some information about the Eternals. The Eternals, also known as the Eternals, are a race standing at the top of the universe. In terms of potential, they are even more terrifying than Odin's Aesir. The Eternals were born millions of years ago. According to Thanos' memory, Thanos only knew that his race was heading for destruction due to resource problems. At that time, Thanos was dubbed the Mad Titan, and in order to find his own destiny, he had been fighting in the universe. When he returned to the Eternals' planet again, it had become a ruin, and countless Eternals had become crazy. Thanos slaughtered the entire Eternal clan with his own hands, and at the same time, he found his own destiny in his own people, which was to randomly destroy half of the creatures in the universe in order to offset the rate of resource consumption in the universe. At the same time, the Eternals have terrifying potential. It is not unreasonable for Thanos to be called the Mad Titan. Aaron's only found a trace of the Eternals in Thanos' short-term memory. In the Marvel Universe, are the Eternals really extinct? Alan's frowned slightly. The reason why he cared about the Eternals was because of Alan's next plan. The physique of a super soldier was not what Alan's wanted. Although the superpowers were very strong, the body had to reach the level of Thanos. Swish. Alan's body returned to its original appearance, his eyes were cold and deep. He saw the future again. The group of Avengers still won, because in the future, these people had the terrifying artifact of the Infinity Gauntlet. Therefore, even in the face of the unmatched Thanos, these people still won. This is why Alan's did not travel directly to the future. Without the strength to surpass Thanos and the power of Thanos, if he rashly appeared in front of the future Avengers, Alan's would definitely be beaten in various ways. Therefore, before he had sufficient foundation, Alan's still needed to be cautious. And those future Avengers were not what Alan's was paying attention to now. What Alan's needed to consider now was how to get out of this timeline. Just when Alan's synchronized Thanos' memory, a deep wormhole opened in the outer space of the Earth. In the wormhole, a huge cross-shaped spaceship jumped from the distant deep space of the universe. Colonel Robbie has arrived at Earth 2014, location, outer space. In the spacecraft, a cold female voice sounded, and Colonel Robbie, the war machine sitting in the driver's seat, stood up with a serious face. Earth in 2014. According to Doctor Strange's observation, in this timeline, Aaron's ordered Sokovia to fall. Just like an asteroid hitting the Earth, half of the Earth would be destroyed. Colonel Rhodes recalled the message that the future Avengers passed to Colonel Rhodes after crossing to the planet Morag. Although his eyes were a little confused, Colonel Rhodes believed in his future companions. Damn quantum theory, doesn't it say that traveling to the past from the future will not change what happened in the past? Then what about this Alan's? After a moment of silence, Colonel Robbie cursed. He was just a soldier, a superhero, and he didn't understand the profound and obscure quantum theory at all. Colonel Robbie, quantum theory is chaotic. When the future travels to the past becomes the future. So no matter what you do, your past will not change. However, Alan's awakened in the past. Alan's, every move will cause the theory of quantum entanglement. Every growth of Alan's will be embedded in the past of the main timeline. In 2023, Veronica, an artificial intelligence life upgraded by Tony Stark, began to explain quantum theory, but Colonel Robbie, the war machine, was completely confused, with blank eyes. Okay, I'm just a soldier, I don't need to understand any damn quantum theory, I just need to know what I should do now, Veronica. Interrupting Veronica's explanation, Colonel Robbie saw Sokovia below through the three-dimensional projection in front of him. The 150 million thrusters made Sokovia look glittering at this time. Activate the Star Destroyer cannon to stop Sokovia from falling. Veronica was silent for a moment, Her tone became even colder, and at the same time, the Star Destroyer cannon from the Kree spacecraft began to charge. Hey, you mean to kill them, right? Got it. This time, Colonel Robbie finally understood what Veronica meant. He raised his right hand and pressed the button on his neck. The metal visor closed and the war machine started. Wait, our Avengers seem to need a little help. Just as Veronica was about to launch the interstellar Star Destroyer, several thermal images appeared on Colonel Robbie's visor, which made Colonel Robbie smile. Activate the guiding beam. Veronica also discovered the Avengers and directly turned on the guiding beam on the spaceship. A dazzling light enveloped the Avengers. F***K, what the hell is this time? Are our alien neighbors visiting Earth? Shrouded by the guiding light, the Iron Man suit couldn't get rid of it at all, which made Tony Stark's face solemn, but he still didn't forget his venomous tongue. Thor, do you recognize the spaceship above your head? Captain America Rogers' voice was more solemn than ever before. Before the Allens were dealt with, another alien spaceship came. Captain Rogers began to miss the time during World War II. Although there was war at that time, all the people were human. The Kree's Judgment ship, this ship is not equipped with much firepower. It is only equipped with an interstellar Star Destroyer cannon and hundreds of particle ray cannons. Thor was also enveloped by the guiding light and could not move, but there was no panic on Thor's face. As a god of Asgard, the Kree's Judgment ship really could not cause Thor's emotions to fluctuate. Interstellar Star Destroyer, the name sounds like it can destroy a planet. Falcon Sam's face was solemn, his eyes flashed with a trace of fear, and his tone was full of worry. No, although it sounds like a Star Destroyer, it can only destroy a continent at best. Thor said lightly, not noticing that the other Avengers in their iron suits had darkened their faces. F***K. Chapter 91. F***K. Thor, are you showing off? Hey, I am the future God King of Asgard. This is just a Kree spaceship. Kneel down. As he was about to be sucked into the spaceship, Tony Stark still cursed Thor. Obviously, Tony Stark was still a little envious of Thor's divine body. Bang, bang, bang. On the deck of the Kree spaceship, all the Avengers appeared here. The control on their bodies disappeared. Captain America Rogers took the lead in raising the vibranium shield and looked around vigilantly. Friday, scan this place. Tony Stark turned his head and looked around, taking in the facilities in the spaceship, while commanding Friday in the Iron Man suit. Swish, swish. However, what Tony Stark had never expected was that the artificial intelligence, which had always been Tony's best helper, was now flashing a screen on its visor as if it had been electromagnetically interfered with. Beep. In front of Tony Stark, the screen ended, replaced by the image of a strange woman. Tony looked at this most perfect woman in his ideal and frowned. Sir, I am the artificial intelligence life you know in the future, Veronica. The strange and cold female voice woke Tony Stark up. Apparently, Veronica from the future had a very terrifying computing power. In a few seconds, she had already invaded Friday's system and suppressed Friday's data. Will the future me create an artificial intelligence life? Just by looking at the image of Veronica on the mask, Tony Stark believed Veronica's words, because Veronica's image was designed by Tony himself after spending nights with countless beauties. It is the most perfect image of a woman in Tony's mind. It combines the beauty of the West and the East, which is pleasing to the eye. Hey, Tony, you will be more mature and charming in the future. The hatch in front of the Avengers opened, and War Machine came out. Colonel Robbie warmly hugged the somewhat confused Tony Stark, and then gave Falcon Sam a big hug. Sam, it's great to see you alive. Colonel Robbie's words confused Falcon Sam, who stared at Colonel Robbie with a strange look on his face. Well, are you all from the future? Quantum shuttle theory is not for you to play with. Tony Stark can be compared with gods with his mortal body. The wisdom in his mind is no joke. In just a moment, Tony has already judged the situation clearly and frowned. Veronica, don't my future self realize that time travel according to quantum theory may end up being worse? Tony Stark's face was solemn. The quantum world was chaotic and confusing. Tony didn't believe that his future self would not think of this. Sir, in fact, you have no idea how bad the future will be. Veronica's voice sounded, still without any emotion, but it made all the Avengers look solemn. Click, click, click. Tony Stark opened a control panel on his wrist and clicked it, and the Avengers' iron suits all turned into suitcases. Veronica, explain what this means. Captain America Rogers could also hear Veronica's voice. As the nominal leader of the Avengers, Rogers wanted to know as much as possible about the future. Captain Rogers, in fact, the future is already in danger. Thanos snapped his fingers and destroyed half of the life in the universe. In order to bring back these lost people, the Avengers launched a rescue plan. According to the quantum shuttle of Ant-Man Scott Lang, who came back from the quantum realm, the Avengers traveled through time. After hearing Veronica's words, Rogers fell into deep thought. The fact that the future was in danger made Rogers realize that things might have reached a point where they could not be reversed. "Hey, Veronica, I like the word purple potato head." Tony Stark smiled and praised Veronica. "Sir, this is what you in the future call Thanos. You in the future think that Thanos' race is a kind of purple potato." Veronica answered Tony Stark's words at the same time, which made Tony Stark's mustache rise. Tony knew that this was definitely his character. "Tony, we in the future have failed." Colonel Rhodey of War Machine's eyes were full of self-blame and guilt. In the Infinity War, Thanos didn't even do anything, but he easily obtained the 6 Infinity Stones and played that finger snap. "Sir, Doctor Strange asked me to bring you information about the future." Veronica's voice sounded again, and at the same time a 3-dimensional projection was projected on the spacecraft. In the projection, Doctor Strange Stephen Strange, wearing a magic cloak, had a serious face. "Tony, you must be wondering who the enemy is. Colonel Rhodey, you must be wondering too." Doctor Strange sat cross-legged on a ruin, surrounded by the embarrassed Avengers. Except for Iron Man, almost all the Avengers were present. "Tony, we have eliminated Thanos twice." Doctor Strange said this, and before Tony and the others could react, Colonel War Machine Rhodey's eyes widened. "Damn it, aren't we still carrying out the plan to collect the Infinity Stones?" Colonel Rhodey's face was extremely confused at this time. He hadn't returned to the future yet, but the future war was over. And he eliminated Thanos twice. Time is running out. Listen, although we have eliminated Thanos, there is now a more terrifying guy, and you should have seen him. Doctor Strange's words made the Avengers look at each other, and everyone's face became solemn. Tony Stark even walked in front of Doctor Strange's projection. Thanos is already terrifying, and now there is another guy who is even more terrifying than Thanos. Thinking of the mission he received after crossing the planet Morag, Colonel Rhodey immediately thought of Aaron's. To be precise, the Allens you are facing in this timeline is called the Super Allens. Doctor Strange's words made everyone frown, obviously unable to understand what Doctor Strange said. "I have observed many timelines and seen Allens many times. Each time, Allens will undergo a different transformation. The Allens in this timeline, I call them Super Allens. In this timeline, Aaron's absorbed the superpowers of the Inhumans, and his strength improved by leaps and bounds. Even when facing the Hulk, he was able to defeat him head-on. Even the combination of various superpowers was enough to destroy the Earth. Allens' superpower is very terrifying, but at the same time, Allens' the superpower is also very easy to deal with. His body is only the physical fitness of a super soldier. As long as you get close to Allens and stab the vibranium dagger into Allens' heart, you will end Allens' life. Guys, cheer up. The superpowered Allenus is the weakest of Allenus in many timelines. As long as you unite, you can defeat Allenus and fundamentally save the future." Chapter 92. Wait, the super-powered Arenus. Still the weakest. Hey, jokes from the future are really not that good. Thor, holding Thor's hammer, did not agree with Doctor Strange's words at all. If Arenus outside was still the weakest, then what would be the strongest Arenus? However, in front of Thor was only the image recorded by Doctor Strange in the future, and he did not answer Thor's words. After Doctor Strange finished speaking, the projection was closed. "Hey, guys, we seem to have some work to do next." Tony Stark clapped his hands, attracting everyone's attention, and spread his hands, saying helplessly, "I am more concerned about what Doctor Strange said, that in this timeline, Aaron's is the superpower Aaron's." Captain America Rogers frowned. Regarding the previous future information, Rogers was more concerned about the timeline issue. Bingo, according to the explanation of the future juggler, the one produced in our timeline is the superpowered Aaron's, and maybe in another timeline it is Iron Man Aaron's, Captain America Aaron's. Tony Stark nodded and looked towards Colonel Rhodey, the War Machine. Seeing Colonel Rhodey in good health, his eyes were filled with a hint of relief. "Colonel Rhodey, I'm so glad you're safe and sound." This time it was Tony Stark's turn to hug Rhodey. In fact, in this timeline, Robbie was still in the intensive care unit, and it was unknown when he would wake up. Well, how about my past self? And what about Hawkeye, Barton and Natasha? Looking at Tony's appearance, Colonel Robbie had a bad feeling. He saw Falcon and Tony Stark, but not himself, Clint Barton and Natasha. Colonel Robbie, now is not the time to worry about these things. The Interstellar Star Destroyer has been fully charged. Next, you have to complete your mission. Veronica's cold voice sounded in the spaceship. At the same time, from the bottom of the spaceship, a cannon muzzle with two sharp teeth flashing with red light extended out. Hiss, hiss, hiss. In the center of the muzzle, terrifying energy fluctuations were condensing, and the deep space of the universe began to shine. The dark environment was broken by the white light. What happened at the Sokovia base? Ultron, who was in the Skrull spaceship, was the first to notice the high-energy reaction. The data link was in Sokovia, and he asked. As Ultron asked, a stream of data was transmitted to Ultron's brain, and Ultron immediately discovered the spaceship that appeared silently over Sokovia, and the white light blooming above the spaceship. Wanda, I want to see the boss. Ultron found the Scarlet Witch Wanda. His silver-white streamlined metal body reflected the light, his eyes became serious, and he said to Wanda. Ultron, Mr. Aarons has issued an order. No matter what happens, you cannot disturb him. You can solve the problems yourself. Scarlet Witch Wanda blocked Ultron with her right hand, looked at Ultron, and said Aaron's previous order. Did the boss really tell me to solve it myself? Deep in Ultron's core consciousness, the data neurons were refreshing frantically, showing Ultron's excitement at this moment. Of course, this is Mr. Aaron's order. Ultron, you are free for now. Scarlet Witch Wanda's psychic ability keenly sensed Ultron's excitement at this time, nodded slightly, and said something that made Ultron excited. Very good, it's time to end this world. Ultron's core data stream flashed, and his entire body quickly flew out of the Skrull spaceship, and his huge body flew rapidly towards Sokovia. The Skrull spaceship was not far from Sokovia, and Ultron arrived almost instantly. Sokovia's energy shield automatically opened, and Ultron fell from the sky and landed at the Sokovia street. Christ Church. The great moment has finally arrived. This is in accordance with the boss's plan. In Ultron's core consciousness, the idea of destroying humanity has never disappeared, but because Alan's gained control of Ultron, this idea was suppressed. At this time, hearing Alan's words relayed by Scarlet Witch Wanda, the inner thoughts burst out again, and misinterpreted Scarlet Witch Wanda's words. Crack. Ultron pressed his metal right hand on the core propulsion device in the center of the church, using his own power to reverse the core propulsion force. A terrifying blue energy beam instantly burst out from the 150 million thrusters. Boom. Sokovia, like an asteroid, began to generate a terrifying reverse thrust. Like a meteor, it instantly broke away from outer space and was captured by the Earth's gravity. Boom, boom, boom. The entire Sokovia was captured by the Earth's gravity. The 150 million thrusters placed on Sokovia released blue energy, and the entire speed increased crazily. The air in the atmosphere was compressed and rolled down. K, Sokovia is falling. Thor obviously noticed the abnormality in Sokovia, and cursed, his face full of solemnity. Veronica, show Sokovia's falling trajectory and speed. Tony Stark quickly put on his Iron Man suit, fastened his visor, and said to Veronica. Sir, Sokovia's falling speed is increasing exponentially. The current speed is incalculable. It is estimated that there are only 3 minutes left before it hits the Earth. Veronica's voice sounded, and Veronica simulated the trajectory of Sokovia's impact. Everyone fell silent because Sokovia's final landing point was New York. K, New York City is really in trouble. Tony Stark said venomously, and quickly walked into the control room of the spacecraft. After just a few glances, he understood the simple control of the spacecraft, and quickly grasped the propulsion lever of the spacecraft with both hands. Hey, Tony, are you planning to drive the spaceship into the Earth? This is not a good idea. Colonel Robbie of War Machine looked at Tony Stark's action and suddenly showed a look of surprise. If this kind of spaceship really appeared on the Earth, it would probably cause an uproar again. According to the data displayed by Veronica, the rapidly falling Sokovia, the interstellar star destroyer can't be aimed at all, so you are wrong, Colonel Robbie. Veronica, activate maximum propulsion. I'm not driving into Earth. I'm planning to crash into the Earth. Tony Stark's words stunned everyone. However, before the Avengers could stop him, the power reactor in the spacecraft exploded at full power, and the entire spacecraft crashed into the Earth crazily. "Shit, are you crazy? Tony." War Machine Colonel Rhodey's face was livid, and he shouted at Tony Stark loudly, and looked at Captain America Rogers, hoping that Rogers could stop Tony. But to Colonel Rhodey's surprise, Captain Rogers was silent at this time. Suddenly, Colonel Rhodey felt that he had traveled through time, and everyone seemed to be crazy. Chapter 93. Boom, boom. Thousands of meters above the Earth, two huge fireballs were burning crazily. One big fireball and one small fireball seemed to be chasing each other in midair. These two fireballs were the rapidly falling spaceships driven by Sokovia and the Avengers. Crazy, everyone is crazy. If you keep falling at this speed, you will destroy the Earth without destroying the enemy. In the Kree Judgment spacecraft, with both hands tightly grasping the armrests of the seat, feeling the terrifying impact inside the spacecraft, War Machine Colonel Rhodey cursed again. "Hey, Rhodey, if I were you, I would save my strength for the next battle." Tony Stark walked down from the driver's seat with a hint of ridicule on his face. Facing such a crazy thing, Tony Stark's eyes were not panicked at all, just like when Tony rushed into the wormhole with a nuclear bomb during the New York War. "Tony, how confident are you that you can stop Sokovia?" Also sitting in the chair, Captain America Rogers' face turned pale. This was the first time he had called a spaceship, which inevitably reminded Captain Rogers of the plane crash during World War II. "Zero, in fact, if we don't do something, we won't be able to catch up with that little guy at our speed." Tony Stark said bluntly, raised his right hand, and a projection appeared in the air. In the projection, Sokovia and the spaceship were like children and adults, but their speed was much faster than that of adults. According to calculations, in 2 minutes, Sokovia will hit the center of New York City. At that time, New York City will be destroyed just like in the Jurassic period. Tony raised his hand and clicked it. The projection began to simulate the scene of Sokovia hitting the center of New York City. The entire American continent was destroyed in an instant. The terrifying shock wave destroyed the entire world in an instant, and humans were exterminated. The thick smoke and dust formed by the explosion blocked the sun. "Damn it, Veronica, is there any way for me to go back to the future?" Looking at the scene covered up by Tony Stark, War Machine's face was solemn, and he turned to Veronica in the control center and asked. "Colonel Rhodey, in fact, the quantum machine of the future has been destroyed, and your quantum suit does not record the time coordinates of 2023, so, unfortunately, you can't go back." Veronica's cold and emotionless voice sounded, making Colonel Rhodey's face darken. "Well, I'm beginning to miss Jarvis." Muttering, Colonel Rhodey of War Machine put on his visor and looked serious. As a soldier, Colonel Rhodey took going to the battlefield as his belief. "Sir, we are about to enter the stratosphere." Veronica's voice sounded, Tony Stark's eyes flashed, he nodded to Rogers and others, and put on his visor directly. "The stratosphere will be relatively stable. We need to jump from the spaceship to Sokovia to slow down Sokovia's descent." Tony Stark's voice sounded in the communication channel. Veronica controlled the bottom hatch of the spaceship to open, and Tony Stark, wearing an iron suit, jumped down first. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Following Tony Stark, Captain America Rogers, Falcon Sam, and Thor all jumped down. The acceleration of the spaceship made these people fall quickly towards Sokovia. Ultron Army, move out. However, Ultron, created by Tony Stark, was very familiar with Tony's thinking habits. When he saw Tony Stark appear in the air, Ultron had already anticipated Tony Stark's purpose. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. In the Sokovia base, the Ultron robots on standby quickly rushed towards the Avengers, the energy shields above their heads opened, and the Ultron robots raised their hands one by one. Boom, boom, boom. Missiles exploded in the center of the Avengers, and the flames of the explosion drowned the falling Avengers. "Hey, I don't want to be a target." Iron Man Tony Stark penetrated the smoke, raised his right hand, and released the energy absorbed by the vibranium crazily. The red light beam directly pierced through more than a dozen Ultron robots. Bang, bang, bang. The Avengers launched a counterattack. Captain Rogers, wearing a retro Iron Heart battle suit, threw out a vibranium shield in his right hand. The vibranium shield violated the laws of physics and knocked down the Ultron robots one after another. Thor was even more thunderous. Every time he threw the Meowth hammer, it would take away a string of Ultron robots, while Falcon Sam used the steel wings behind him to frantically circle and attack. Ultron guards, kill them. Looking at the Avengers approaching rapidly in midair, Ultron's eyes were full of murderous intent, and the core data surged. In the base of Sokovia, dozens of 4-meter-tall Ultron giant robots rose rapidly into the air. Boom, boom, boom. These robots are not comparable to the previous Ultron robots. They are mixed with some vibranium particles, which makes these robots have amazing defensive power. In addition, they are equipped with various war weapons, which make these robots simply become terrifying killing machines. With just one round of volleys, Iron Man Tony Stark was forced to change the direction of his fall and rise into the air, but the missiles behind him automatically tracked him, and there was no way to avoid it. Bang! Just when the missile was about to hit Tony Stark, a vibranium shield went around from the front of Tony Stark to the back and collided with the missile. The 4-meter-tall Ultron robots, with their eyes flashing scarlet light, opened their hands, and all the weapon systems were turned on, releasing missiles one after another. F***K, I have never lost in a weapons competition. Colonel Robbie, the war machine, looked serious, and the Gatling gun behind him spun rapidly, and thousands of bullets swept out, accurately intercepting the missiles. Boom, boom, boom. A series of explosions sounded in the air, and below them, all the citizens of New York City looked up at the sky. When they saw the meteor and the huge spaceship, the whole of New York suddenly became panicked. NYPD. Alien spaceships are about to attack New York again, please save me. God, is New York City really that bad? F***K, are these aliens only targeting New York? Bullshit. Everyone was in a panic, cursing and shouting for help. The NYPD's phone had been flooded with calls. Veronica had observed the chaos on the ground through satellites, and Tony Stark had seen it too. However, now was not the time to pay attention to it. Veronica, overload the arc reactor. Looking at Sokovia moving away, Tony Stark's eyes flashed with solemn light, and he gave Veronica an order directly. Boom. Following Tony Stark's order, Veronica overloaded the arc reactor on the chest of the Iron Man suit. The arc reactor on the chest became as dazzling as the sun. The overloaded arc reactor gave Tony Stark a terrifying propulsion force. Bang! Tony Stark landed on the ground of Sokovia at a speed faster than a meteor. The huge propulsion force caused the ground under his feet to crack inch by inch in an instant. Sir, there are 3 minutes left before the overloaded arc reactor explodes. P.S. Second update, now available. Robbie begs for the first order. Big guys, please subscribe, support. Robbie, thanks again. Please subscribe, please subscribe, please subscribe. Important things should be said 3 times. Chapter 94. See all. 0.042s scan. 0.043 Sun. The Skrull spaceship. Hundreds of Skrulls looked at Lambert, who had fallen to the ground and had been brain dead, with horror in their eyes full of confusion and fear. In a room on the Skrull spaceship, the metal hatch opened, and Allens walked out of the room, glanced at the Skrulls, and looked towards the Scarlet Witch. Wanda, sweetheart, has Ultron left yet? Walking in front of Scarlet Witch, Aarons bent down slightly, with a gentle smile on his face, and asked with interest. Mr. Allens, Ultron wanted to enter the room to look for you. Because of your instructions, I asked Ultron to handle the matter first. Scarlet Witch. Wanda showed an excited look on her face. Looking at Alan's face close at hand, her heart was pounding. It seems that Ultron seems to have misunderstood the meaning, but it doesn't matter, let's quietly enjoy a good show. Aaron's eyes were deep, and the light of the mind gem on his forehead made Wanda's face intoxicated. She didn't have any idea of resisting Aaron's words. Skrulls, surrender to me. Allens turned and walked in front of the group of Skrulls. He did not intend to kill them, because he had something else to do with them. Submit to the great, supreme Allens, and you will be exempted. Following behind Allens, Scarlet Witch. Wanda lowered her hands slightly, crouched, lowered her head, and spoke in a solemn voice. Great, Supreme Lord Aarons, we the Skrulls surrender. Because of Scarlet Witch. Wanda's statement, the Skrulls looked at each other in bewilderment. The desire to survive overcame the pride of the Skrulls. All of them knelt on the ground, followed the words of Scarlet Witch. Wanda, and offered their loyalty to Aarons. Very good, Wanda sweetheart, mark these people. With a cold face, Alan's tone was full of majesty and coldness. Swish. Following Alan's order, a ball of red light in the hands of Scarlet Wanda turned into strands of light, covering the Skrulls kneeling on the ground. These rays invaded the Skrulls' consciousness and planted a mental suggestion deep in their consciousness. Scarlet Wanda has psychic superpowers, and she can plant mental suggestions in the Skrulls' consciousness. As long as the mental suggestion is stimulated, these Skrulls will become Alan's mental puppets. Next, let's watch a good show. In the Skrull Control Center, a Skrull scientist received an order from Alan's to open a virtual projection, which showed the battle between Sokovia and the Avengers above the Earth. Above Sokovia, the arc reactor overloaded Iron Man Tony Stark's speed increased, and he instantly rushed into the energy shield that had not yet closed, and landed in front of the Sokovia Holy Christ Church. Senior, the overloaded reactor is about to explode, and there are 3 minutes left. Veronica's voice sounded, but Tony Stark ignored it. He looked at the tall Ultron in front of him. This was the first time Tony Stark looked at this creation of his own. To be honest, you are really my best. I once imagined that the Ultron in my hand formed a line of defense for the Earth. But now it seems, I seem to have failed. Tony Stark shrugged, with a hint of helplessness, but secretly stored the overflowing energy of the arc reactor in his body. Tony Stark, I hate you from the bottom of my heart. I know you are stalling for time. Ultron's eyes were full of resentment, and he raised his right hand. The palm cannon burst out instantly and hit Tony Stark. Hey, kid, you are being rebellious. No matter how much I hate you, there is one thing that will never change: I am your father. Tony Stark dodged Ultron's palm cannon and said something that made Ultron's eyes burst into a terrifying mechanical light. Tony Stark, I'm going to kill you. Ultron's feet and hands gushed out terrifying airflows, and he rushed directly towards Tony Stark, clenched his right fist, and smashed it directly on Tony Stark's visor. Bang! A heavy sound rang out, and Tony Stark's body was completely knocked away by Ultron. At the same time, Ultron appeared at the point where Tony Stark fell, and a high-vibration particle knife appeared in the palm of his right hand. Swish! Ultron's right-hand ion knife instantly cut into the iron suit of Iron Man Tony Stark, and the high-vibration particle knife directly pierced Tony's right arm. Hiss, Ultron boy, it hurts. Tony Stark took a breath of cold air, and the arc reactor in front of his chest instantly burst into a dazzling white light. Boom! The huge white light directly tore Ultron's huge body into pieces, and then smashed into a ruin in Sokovia, burning a deep pit in the ruins. Hey, Ultron, how powerful is my arc particle cannon? Tony Stark was suspended in the air, his tone full of pride and confidence. The power generated by the overload of the arc reactor was so strong that even Ultron could not resist it. Bang! Under the ground under Tony Stark's feet, a bigger Ultron broke out of the ground, grabbed Tony Stark's right foot with his right hand, and retracted his mechanical arm, smashing Tony directly into the ground. Well, you can evolve yourself, and you are indeed going to surpass me. Tony was thrown to the ground, and his own armor could not absorb all the kinetic energy. The vibranium particles were not as strong as the vibranium shield in Captain America Roger's hand. But I'm not here to fight you. The arc reactor on his chest began to flash red, which made Tony Stark realize that he had to get rid of Ultron. Boom, boom. The propulsion system exploded, and Tony Stark disappeared from the spot, appeared in midair, and flew towards the edge of Sokovia. Of course, Ultron would not let Tony Stark ruin his plan. With his thrusters fully turned on, Ultron followed closely behind and flew towards Tony Stark. The two chased each other frantically in midair, and loud explosions kept ringing over Sokovia. Tony Stark was always in the lead because of the energy explosion of the overloaded arc reactor. Whoosh, whoosh. The two circled in midair, and then flew vertically to the bottom of Sokovia. The two circled and fell in midair. Tony Stark suddenly accelerated and directly got rid of Ultron. Hey, guys, get the Star Destroyer ready. Tony Stark had already flown to the bottom of Sokovia, dodging the Ultron robots that were looking for him, and placed his hands at the bottom of Sokovia. Boom! The overload energy of the arc reactor exploded instantly, and streams of red energy columns emerged from the thrusters of the Iron Man's suit, forming a terrifying reverse thrust. As expected of Tony Stark, he always explodes in times of crisis. Alan's in the Skrull spaceship had obviously also seen Tony Stark's purpose and sneered, but his tone was full of admiration. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 95. See all. 0.166s scan. 0.055s boom. Sokovia was falling rapidly in the sky above New York. The terrible air pressure made all New Yorkers look desperate. The hurricane swept through, and the pedestrians on the street were blown all over the place. Senior Sokovia is only 5,000 meters away from the ground, 4700 m, 3,000 meters, continuing to descend. Expected to fall within 1 minute. Veronica's cold voice sounded in Tony Stark's iron suit, making Tony Stark show a helpless smile on his face. Veronica, do you think I'm on vacation now? Uninstall the weapon system, leaving only the basic life support system in the armor, and then turn the thrusters to full speed. Tony Stark pressed his hands on the bottom of Sokovia, and red energy beams spurted out from his elbows, shoulders, elbows, and soles. Boom! The whole Sokovia shook, and a huge reverse thrust was generated from the bottom, making Ultron, who was standing on the ground of Sokovia, look gloomy. Find him and kill him. Ultron issued an order with a wave of his hand. As the leader of the Ultron army, without the restraint of errands, Ultron now only wanted to destroy mankind. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. One by one, the Ultron robots rushed to the bottom of Sokovia and surrounded Tony Stark almost instantly. Hey, I need help here. Tony Stark's face showed a trace of sweat. At this time, all the energy of the iron suit on his body was invested in the thrusters, and he had no ability to deal with these Ultron robots. Crackling. In mid-air, a Thor's hammer surrounded by thunder fell from the sky, and in the blink of an eye it pierced through the Ultron robots one by one. Thor flew over closely behind it. Tony, if I save you, can I become the director of Stark Group? After catching the hammer of Thor, Thor finally found a chance to taunt Tony Stark, which made Thor, who was in a heavy mood because of facing errands, show a rare smile on his face. Hey, future God King, the director of my Stark Group can only be Peppers. Tony Stark raised his mustache and said, holding Sokovia in his hands. Well, I think you need a little help, Tony. Looking at the gradually disintegrating and shattering armor on Tony Stark's body, Thor frowned slightly, swung Thor's hammer, attracted the lightning, and smashed it in front of Tony Stark's armor. Senior energy overflows by 200%, energy overload, about to be injected into the thruster. Veronica's voice sounded, and streams of red mixed with blue energy gushed out of the thrusters of Tony Stark's Iron Man suit. Rumble. Although the entire Sokovia was still falling, the speed of falling had slowed down a little, which made the Avengers who were fighting in the air suddenly raise a wave of excitement. Well done, Tony. Captain America Rogers, after dealing with the two guards, began to praise. I have to say, Tony, you are even crazier than the future. Looking at Tony Stark, who was holding Sokovia up by himself and slowing down Sokovia's speed, Colonel War Machine Rhodey showed a trace of admiration on his face. Hey, guys, now is not the time to celebrate. Veronica, can you aim now? Tony Stark doesn't want to hear Colonel Rhodes' praise now. He just wants to kill Sokovia above his head. Senior, the Star Destroyer cannon launch trajectory is being recalculated. We are capturing Sokovia. The estimated capture time is 30 seconds. Veronica's voice brought a smile to Tony's face, but when he heard that it would take another 30 seconds, his face darkened again. Thor, I still need your Meowth hammer to massage me. Just as Tony finished speaking, Thor flew over with thunder again and smashed directly on Tony's iron suit. Boom. Sokovia's speed slowed down again. In the spaceship above Sokovia, Veronica's data was running like a waterfall, and the rapid calculation captured Sokovia's trajectory. Boom, boom, boom. Above New York, Sokovia fell madly, 2,500 meters, 2,000 meters, 1,000 meters, 500 meters, all the citizens of New York seemed to have stopped working, and the entire city fell into a dead silence. Boom. Sokovia shook again, and at the same time, a ball of red light was marked in the cockpit of the Kree spacecraft above their heads, and the light flickered. Senior Sokovia has been captured, the interstellar Star Destroyer is ready and about to be launched. Countdown, 5, 4. Veronica's voice rang in the ears of all the Avengers. Even Thor heard the prompt from Tony. Thor took Tony Stark and flew away quickly. Avengers, retreat. Captain America Rogers issued the order to retreat at the same time. The back of the Iron Man suit ejected energy airflow, and quickly moved away from Sokovia. Not only Captain America, War Machine, and Falcon Sam also fled quickly. Star Destroyer, fire. At the bottom of the Kree spacecraft, the muzzle of the Star Destroyer released a ball of destructive white light, which accurately enveloped Sokovia. The silent Star Destroyer instantly smashed into Sokovia, and the energy shield on Sokovia could not block the terrifying energy of the Star Destroyer at all. Boom! A mushroom cloud instantly rose in the center of Sokovia, and then a destructive shock wave spread to the entire Sokovia. Boom, boom, boom. The entire Sokovia disintegrated in the air. The energy of the Star Destroyer was enough to destroy an asteroid. Even if Sokovia had an energy shield, it would still be useless. The huge Sokovia land first fell apart and turned into powder in the white light, followed by a series of explosions. Ouch! A dazzling white light covered the sky. In New York City, which was shut down, everyone was in tears. The white light was dazzling, but it brought hope of life. Great, the meteor is destroyed. Oh God, did you hear my call? It's crazy, we survived. After a brief silence, the citizens of New York began to cheer wildly, and these citizens also saw the figures of the Avengers in the sky. They knew that these Avengers had saved the world again. Boom! In the eyes of everyone, Sokovia was melted by the white light in the sky. Tony Stark saw the disappearance of Sokovia with his own eyes and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Boom! However, what no one expected was that although Sokovia disappeared, the things hidden in Sokovia were exposed at the same time. A behemoth crashed into the New York City. Chapter 96. In New York City, all the people were cheering. Sokovia, which was above their heads, finally turned to dust. Everyone was grateful to the Avengers for saving the world again. However, the expressions of Captain America Rogers and others, who were Avengers, were not optimistic at this time. Not only were they not excited, but they were shocked. Boom! The entire block of Viking Avenue in New York City shook. In the center of Viking Avenue, a huge object fell from the center of the Sokovia explosion to the ground. The huge force caused the streets to fall apart and cars were blown away. WTF? What happened? The confused citizens of Viking Avenue were startled by the shaking of the ground under their feet. Everyone looked towards the center of Viking Avenue with puzzled eyes. Oh my God, what am I seeing? A giant robot. A transformer. A young man's eyes became terrified. He looked up at the center of Viking Avenue and screamed in horror. Damn, didn't the Avengers defeat their enemies? So what the hell is this? F*****K, why are these damn monsters focusing on New York? Why not go to other countries? Hundreds of citizens on Viking Avenue seemed out of place amid the cheers of New York City. Everyone's eyes were filled with fear, and even some timid people had begun to stay away from Viking Avenue. Tony Stark, do you think you have defeated me? An angry voice sounded in the center of Viking Avenue. The smoke and dust raised by the explosion slowly dissipated. In the center of Viking Avenue, a huge silver-white metal robot hundreds of meters tall appeared in everyone's sight. Its terrifying size was even taller than the skyscrapers next to it. Its silver-white metal streamlined body looked huge and coordinated. Just standing here brought a terrifying pressure to the people around it. Shit, Ultron. Iron Man Tony Stark quickly landed on the ground of Viking Avenue and looked up at the huge metal robot. The data showed that this giant robot was an enlarged version of Ultron, with a silver-white liquid metal body and red mechanical eyes. There was a trace of Ultron on the metal face, but it looked smoother, and the metal muscles on the body were bulging, just like the human body structure. What do you think Mr. Allens did with all the vibranium particles he got? The mechanical eyes glowed red. At this time, Ultron had transferred his consciousness to the metal brain of the giant metal robot. A giant Ultron appeared. Bang, bang, bang. The Avengers all fell beside Tony Stark. Looking at this silver-white giant Ultron, cold sweat ran down their faces. At this time, a giant triangular arc reactor in the center of Ultron's chest glowed, and the terrifying energy turned into nerve channels, filling Ultron's body. It's really great, this kind of power. Ultron lowered his head and looked at the Avengers who were like little ants. A cold smile appeared on his face. He raised his right foot and stepped heavily on the Avengers. Boom! A terrifying sonic boom sounded, and the right foot set off a huge gust of wind. Ultron's right foot blocked the sunlight above the Avengers' heads, and a huge shadow crashed down. Boom! Facing Ultron's right foot, Thor swung Thor's hammer and smashed it on Ultron's right foot. The terrifying thunder combined with his own divine power barely blocked Ultron's right foot 5 meters above the Avengers' heads. Crack, crack. Ultron's huge power surged, and the ground under Thor's feet suddenly inch by inch. The muscles in Thor's arms were bulging, and the divine body allowed Thor to withstand tremendous pressure. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The arc reactor on Iron Man Tony Stark was no longer overloaded, and his iron suit was in tatters. Tony Stark had already used up all his strength to stop Sokovia. However, although Tony did not have much combat power, Captain America Rogers controlled his iron suit arsenal to open it, and one Jericho missile after another, dragging its tail flame, attacked Ultron. Bang, bang, bang. However, the missiles hit Ultron's body, but only raised a series of flames, and had no effect on Ultron's body at all. F***K. All the Avengers cursed, and the giant Ultron still looked down at the Avengers, sneering. In outer space, Allens turned around and grabbed Scarlet Witch's right hand. Allens had watched the Avengers fight before. To be honest, Allens was a little disappointed. "Let's go, Wanda, it's time for you to take revenge." With a gentle smile on his face, Aarons activated his superpower quantum teleportation and disappeared on the Skrull spaceship with Scarlet Wanda. Swish. On New York's Viking Avenue, two huge blue light balls appeared in front of the Avengers. The light balls spread, and Aarons and Scarlet Wanda appeared in the blue light curtain in the middle. On the left was Aarons's clone and Quicksilver Pietro. "Shit, Aaron." All the Avengers looked serious. A giant Ultron had already given them a headache, and now Aaron had also appeared, which made the Avengers feel a little desperate. Avengers, unite as one. Facing the depressed Avengers, Captain Rogers, as the leader of the Avengers, tightly grasped the vibranium shield, raised his right arm, and shouted. Avengers, unite as one. It must be said that Rogers is a qualified leader. At this time, Captain Rogers made the remaining Avengers feel one half courage, hope, justice and determination were found, which made the desperate people begin to regain their confidence. Ultron. Allen's voice was cold and low, his eyes were deep, just a name, but it made Ultron behind Allen sweat. "Great, Supreme Lord Allens, your humble servant Ultron pays you the most sincere respect." Ultron's mechanical eyes flashed with fear, and the liquid metal on his body quickly shrank, and his body quickly shrank. In the blink of an eye, he became only 1.8 meters tall. He knelt on one knee in front of Allens, put his hands on the ground, and lowered his metal head. After Ultron's self-upgrade and the special properties of vibranium particles, the giant Ultron can temporarily shrink his size. However, without Hank Pym's Pym particle technology, this shrinkage can only last for a maximum of 1 minute. "You retreat first." Allens waved his right hand, and a vibration of force instantly knocked Ultron away. Even though Ultron's body was made entirely of vibranium particles, he still couldn't resist Allens's power. Superpower Allens. Interesting name. Allens tilted his head slightly, and his telepathic ability allowed Allens to capture the thoughts of the Avengers and know a story that Allens was very interested in. Chapter 97. Not far from New York, thousands of meters above the sky, a spaceship hidden in the clouds is parked here. This spaceship is the headquarters of the reorganized S.H.I.E.L.D. It once crashed in a battle with Hydra, and it was Nick Fury who secretly sent people to renovate the spaceship. At this time, in the center of the spaceship, an eagle head logo is shining with silver light. The whole spaceship is full of various high-end elite talents, and in a room at the center, Nick Fury, the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., is standing with his back to the French window. "Sir, they are here." Commander Maria Hill, Nick Fury's lieutenant, was wearing a neat S.H.I.E.L.D. agent uniform. Her delicate face showed no expression. She walked behind Nick Fury and reminded him. As soon as Commander Hill finished speaking, Coulson, whose hairline was receding rapidly, led his team in. "Sir, what's the mission?" Coulson walked into the room and looked at Nick Fury, who had his back to him. His face was serious, and he waited for Nick Fury's order. "New York is facing a crisis now. I need your team to go there for support, and I will send S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to assist you." Nick Fury turned around, his dark face showed no expression, his eyes were cold, and he said in a serious tone. "New York." When Coulson heard about New York, he immediately thought of Allens, and in connection with the previous meteor, Coulson knew that the situation in New York would not be worse than the New York battle when the Avengers first assembled. "Sir, is that Allens?" Skye in Coulson's team. "No, now Skye has changed her name to Daisy Johnson. The Shockwave girl Daisy hates Allens very much. You know, there is still a cut mark on Skye's forehead, but it is covered by the bangs, so outsiders can't see it." "Skye. Daisy, calm down." Looking at Daisy's excited expression, Coulson pulled Daisy back. Coulson knew very well how powerful Aarons was. He was the guy who slaughtered the entire Inhuman race and gained the Inhumans' superpowers. To be precise, it was the superpower errands. Glancing at Daisy, Nick Fury frowned slightly and said emphatically, "Superpower errands. What does that mean?" Melinda May's face was cold, but her eyes showed a hint of doubt. She obviously couldn't understand Nick Fury's words. The superpowered Allens are Allens with only superpowers. The Allens of this period are relatively the weakest. As long as they unite, they can defeat Allens. After briefly explaining the definition of the superpowered Allens, Nick Fury did not say much, but just began to repeat the content of this mission. This time the mission is to lead the S.H.I.E.L.D. agents to help the Avengers who are in trouble and win the war at all costs. Nick Fury escalated the situation this time to a war, which is enough to show his importance to this mission. Moreover, these S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are not Nick Fury's trump cards. "Yes, A1/4 sir." Coulson's face was serious. He signaled to Nick Fury and then planned to leave here to gather the agents. "Agent Coulson, you don't need to select personnel, because the entire helicarrier is your team." Nick Fury's one eye was shining, and his eyes were more solemn than ever before. It was obvious that Nick Fury had already decided to burn his boats. "Sir, this is the aerospace carrier, you are the director of S.H.I.E.L.D., according to S.H.I.E.L.D's system, you should be in charge of this operation." Coulson showed a surprised look on his face, and raised his doubts at the same time. "I have already handed over the position of director of S.H.I.E.L.D. to you long ago. I have other tasks to do. Don't let me down, Coulson." Nick Fury's face remained expressionless, but his words surprised everyone, including Commander Hill. Sir, you are not planning to escape, are you?" Agent Melinda looked at Nick Fury expressionlessly and asked everyone's true thoughts. "Agent May, this is an order, and I really need to save my life and wait in secret for someone who can turn the tide." Nick Fury's face became darker, and he turned his head to look at Melinda and said solemnly, "Well, the situation in New York is critical. S.H.I.E.L.D. and the helicarrier are now in your hands, Coulson." Nick Fury didn't wait for Coulson to continue speaking. He strode up to Coulson, patted Coulson on the shoulder, and then walked out of the room. "Well, let's not worry about what more important mission Chief Nick Fury has. Commander Hill, order the aerospace carrier to go to New York." Coulson's eyes flashed with a solemn light. Now is not the time to hold Nick Fury accountable for his dereliction of duty. Coulson's instinct tells him that even if the entire aerospace carrier is deployed, this battle will be a life-and-death struggle. Boom. Thousands of meters in the sky, the huge aerospace carrier changed its course and moved rapidly towards New York. The aerospace carrier is the most advanced aerospace vehicle manufactured by S.H.I.E.L.D. It can be said that it is a small spaceship. On the aerospace carrier, all S.H.I.E.L.D. agents are on full alert, because Director Coulson has now issued a Level 10 combat order, which is to defeat errands at all costs. "Sir, we have arrived over New York." In the huge control cabin of the aerospace carrier, Leo Fitz's face was solemn. While controlling the course of the aerospace carrier, he said to Coulson, "Lock onto Viking Avenue and conduct carpet bombing." Coulson was silent for a moment, his face turned cold, but what he said surprised Coulson's team. "Sir, there are still many innocent people on Viking Avenue." Shockwave girl Daisy Johnson frowned and looked at Coulson with surprise, obviously unable to believe that Coulson would actually order an indiscriminate carpet bombing. "I can't care about so much. The world is in danger. As long as I can defeat Allens. And this is an order personally given to me by the former director of S.H.I.E.L.D., Chief Nick Fury." Coulson felt bad, but he knew some information that others didn't know. If errands couldn't be stopped, the whole world would be destroyed. "Commander Hill, contact the military and the underworld Kingpin." Turning to look at Commander Hill, Coulson gave another order. Contacting the military was a long-awaited plan, but contacting the terrifying underworld Kingpin was not a good idea. Everyone thinks Coulson is crazy. Chapter 98. At the top of a 100-story office building in New York City, there is a magnificent training hall with various exercise equipment. In the center of the training hall, dozens of top fighters from all over the world are looking at a huge figure in an expensive white suit and red trousers surrounded by them in horror. Everyone's face is covered with cold sweat. The huge figure is 2.1 meters tall and looks very fat. It is roughly estimated that he weighs 450 pounds. He has a cigar in his mouth, his face is cold and ruthless, and his eyes are flashing with cunning, madness, coldness, viciousness, domineering and other very complex lights. Bang, bang, bang. Even in fear, these fighters can only roar and quickly rush towards the figure in the center. However, these top fighters from all over the world flew backwards before they could launch an offensive. Waste. Standing in the center of the training hall, Kingpin, the leader of the New York Mafia and known as the Emperor of the Underworld, looked at the seriously injured and dying fighter on the ground with a cold and domineering look, and his tone was cold and gloomy. Like a huge fat man, but if you really regard Kingpin as a fat man, you are courting death. 95% of Kingpin's body is muscle, and his physical fitness has reached the peak of the entire human race. Kingpin stood at the forefront of the world stage as a human being, and even gave superheroes a headache. Knock, knock. The door of the training hall was knocked, and Kingpin's eyes flashed with light. He looked sharply at the door, strode directly to the luxurious chair in the training hall, and sat down directly. Come in. A cold voice sounded softly, and a gangster man in a black suit walked in, looking at the feet of the underworld king Jin Bing sitting in the seat with fear in his eyes, and he didn't dare to raise his head at all. Boss, there is a crisis in New York City. Meteors and spaceships appeared in the sky of New York City. According to the calculations of our scientists, if the meteors fall, it will be enough to destroy the whole world. Blake's eyes flashed with fear, and drops of cold sweat on his face had already flowed into his eyes, but he didn't dare to wipe it off, and reported quickly. Tap, 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 tap. The huge and burly body of Kingpin sitting on the chair was like a wall. The index finger of his right hand tapped the armrest of the chair, making a dull and crisp sound. The extremely depressing air in the entire training hall was suffocating. The fighters who were originally lying on the floor were all dead at this time, which made Blake even more terrified. It really is. New York City is in trouble. The eyes were deep, cunning, crazy, cold and ruthless. The cold voice rang out in the hall, and the tone was indescribable. Schadenfreude. As the underworld king, Kingpin was furious when the New York War broke out 2 years ago because the war spread throughout New York City and even to Hell's Kitchen. Kingpin mobilized all his forces to fight the Chidori in the dark corners. Relying on his own power and strength, Kingpin also slaughtered many Chidori. At this time, Kingpin heard that New York was in crisis again, and it was even related to the destruction of the world. The cold and ruthless Kingpin was thinking about how to make his power further. As for the destruction of the world, sorry, this has nothing to do with Kim. Boss, the situation this time is very serious. Even our scientists say. Before Blake could finish his words, a large hand grabbed his neck and lifted him up. Blake looked over in horror, only to see Kingpin's face expressionless, his eyes flashing with danger. Are you teaching me how to do things? Jin Bing's tone was cold as hell. Just one sentence made Blake tremble like a sieve, and a loud sound came out of his mouth, but because of Jin Bing's right hand, Blake couldn't make any sound at all. Ding ling ling. A golden telephone on the table in front of Jin Bing rang, causing Jin Bing's eyes to turn to the phone. Who? After answering the phone, Jin Bing said only one word with a blank expression, but in his mind he had already thought of the forces in New York. He had already thought of several forces and organizations that could get through to his internal line. Jin Bing was not only powerful, but also very intelligent. Mr. Kingpin, I am Coulson from S.H.I.E.L.D. We are in trouble and need your help. Coulson's voice was heard on the phone, his tone was indescribably serious and cold. If it were not for the situation, Coulson would not have contacted the underworld king Kingpin. After all, Kingpin ruled the entire underworld in the United States and had caused a lot of trouble for S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D., do you want me to help S.H.I.E.L.D. evacuate the citizens of New York? Kingpin sneered, his tone did not conceal his sarcasm. Kingpin was the king of the underworld, and he did not care about the lives of the people of New York. If you agree, S.H.I.E.L.D. can help the New York gangs to infiltrate Europe. After a moment of silence, Coulson's tone was full of coldness, and he directly put forward S.H.I.E.L.D.'s conditions. Coulson knew that when dealing with Kingpin, there was never any other consideration, only the exchange of interests. Not enough, S.H.I.E.L.D. needs to help me consolidate my power in Europe and our country, and I also need to know everything about the enemy's intelligence, strength, power, ability, etc. King Bing smiled, like a greedy and cunning wolf, and took the opportunity to put forward his further conditions. Kingpin, you have to know that the military can also do this. Coulson's voice sounded angry. Obviously, he was irritated by the shameless behavior of the underworld king Kingpin. However, the most important thing now is Alan's matter. The military. Maybe they could do it before you informed me, but now, they can't. Jin Bing's voice was cold and confident, his eyes flashing with a deep light. As the king of the underworld, Jin Bing's influence can be said to be spread all over the United States. Even many of the current senators were promoted and funded by Jin Bing. Shit. Coulson couldn't help showing a trace of anger on his face. He cursed and took a deep breath. Coulson knew that Kingpin could do what he said. In the military, Kingpin could also intervene. Okay, Wilson Fisk, S.H.I.E.L.D. has agreed. Damn it, quickly mobilize your forces and evacuate the citizens of New York City. After a moment of silence, Coulson agreed to Kingpin's conditions. After all, the situation was very critical and even S.H.I.E.L.D. might be destroyed. Therefore, even if Kingpin's conditions were difficult to achieve, Coulson could only agree. After all, what Coulson wanted to do most was to drag down the underworld king Kingpin. Agent Coulson, don't forget the information I want. King Bing's mouth curled up with a smile of conspiracy, like a winner, issuing orders. Chapter 99. In the center of Viking Avenue in New York, Allens looked at the superheroes in front of him with cold eyes. His telepathic ability allowed Allens to know exactly what these superheroes were thinking at the moment. Avengers, are you going to stop me? Allens' eyes were shining. Although Sokovia was destroyed by the Star Destroyer, Allens had never intended to let Sokovia crash into the Earth from the beginning. It was just because Ultron's brain was still in the period of his birth, and some ideas implanted by Tony Stark made Ultron do such a crazy thing. Destroying the Earth is of no use to Allens at all. Allens just wants to make some attempts when he leaves this timeline to test the power of this world, or in other words, the foundation of these Avengers. However, the temptation for Allens is a major event that endangers the entire world for the Avengers. The Avengers, Iron Man Tony Stark, Captain America Rogers, Thor, Falcon Sam, War Machine Colonel Rhodey, all looked at Allens cautiously at this time without saying a word. Tony Stark, Iron Man, a mortal who is as powerful as a god. The symbol of American justice, God's adopted son, Captain America Steve Rogers. From Asgard, the chosen successor of God King Odin, Thor Odinson. Aarons turned his attention to Tony Stark, Captain Rogers, and Thor, and his tone was cold and low. As for Falcon and War Machine, Aarons didn't even take them seriously. K, Sam, are we being ignored? Colonel Roddy's voice sounded in the communicator, his tone was helpless, and Falcon Sam fell into silence. Should I say that it is my honor to be in your eyes? Hey, I like what you said just now, that a mortal can be compared with a god. This is in line with my temperament as Tony Stark. Tony Stark's iron suit was already in tatters and could not be used again, so while talking, Tony Stark began to communicate with Veronica using the glasses on his face, calling the small space station in the sky that was like a satellite. SIR, the anti-Hulk armor is being activated. Veronica's message appeared in the high-tech multifunctional smart glasses. At the same time, Tony Stark walked out of the iron suit, wearing a finely crafted handmade vest and jacket, looking uninhibited. Hey, Irons, we still don't know your purpose, so before the battle, can you please explain what your purpose is? Tony Stark intends to delay time, and Irons knows Tony's little thoughts very well. However, for Irons, it doesn't matter at all, because whether Tony Stark wears the anti-Hulk armor or not, the ending is doomed. My purpose. This is a very interesting question. For me, although this timeline still has a lot of value, I am now on Earth, and I still want to see the depths of the Earth. If the Earth, which is at the center of the vortex of the universe, is destroyed, what kind of impact will it cause? A cold smile appeared on the corner of Alan's mouth. Yes, from the beginning Alan wanted to see whether the destruction of the Earth would attract the attention of cosmic gods like Devourer of Worlds, or even stop him. This is crucial to Alan's next plan. If there are cosmic gods such as Devourer of Worlds, or guys like the Celestials, Alan will need to adjust the plans for other timelines. If these gods do not appear, it means that these gods do not attach importance to the issue of the Earth's timeline at all. Therefore, Alan will be able to let go and strengthen himself step by step in the next timeline. Are you crazy? We have already ended the Sokovia plan. Captain America Rogers glared at Aarons, obviously not agreeing with Aarons's understatement of the purpose of destroying the Earth. Hey, Aarons, do you need me to remind you that your Sokovia has been destroyed by a single shot from our helpers from the future? Shrugging his shoulders, Tony Stark couldn't help but speak venomously while waiting for the countdown in front of his glasses to end. Ridiculous, you think that ending the fall of Sokovia means ending my plan? Well, actually, I am a little bit unhappy. Aaron's face turned cold, and what he said surprised not only the Avengers but also Ultron behind Aaron's. At the same time, his inner alarm bells rang, and his data brain was in a state of panic. Because of this fear, Ultron could not maintain his shrunken size and once again became a huge man hundreds of meters tall. Sir. The huge body did not bring Ultron any confidence at all. On the contrary, with its own strength and data computing power increased exponentially, Ultron finally felt the power of Alanus, the unrivaled power. Ultron, stop the army that will arrive in 1 minute. Alan's turned around, his eyes were cold, but there was a faint white light flashing in his black pupils. When Alan's was talking to Tony Stark, he used the foresight to see the approaching American army. Yes, A1/4 sir. Ultron's mechanical eyes flashed with a trace of relief. Apparently, after calculation, Ultron knew that Aaron's was not going to pursue what he had done before. Bang, bang, bang. A terrifying energy flow emerged from Ultron's limbs, and his whole body set off a hurricane, flying quickly to the west. Crack, crack, crack. As soon as Ultron left, huge metal parts quickly appeared in the sky. Tony Stark opened his hands, and the metal parts automatically assembled. In a moment, Tony Stark was wearing a huge and bulky golden-red steel armor. This is the anti-Hulk armor specially made for the Hulk. I never thought it would become my last resort. With a wry smile, Tony Stark, wearing the anti-Hulk armor, is even bigger than the Hulk. The heavy steel suit can provide Tony with terrifying power, which is not even inferior to the Hulk. Hey, Aaron's, it turns out that you are indeed a talkative villain. Putting on the anti-Hulk armor gave Tony Stark a little confidence, and at the same time allowed Tony Stark to fully display his talent for sharp tongue, which made Aaron's stupid and ridiculous self-confidence. Aaron's didn't care about Tony Stark's sharp tongue at all, and even sneered at it. Chapter 100. Team A continues to advance, Team B remains alert, and Team C supports. In New York City, armed helicopters were flying rapidly in the sky. Inside the helicopters, teams of fully armed soldiers were on standby. The commander's orders were heard in the earphones. Action, action. On a plane, General Ross's eyes were serious and his cold face was full of murderous intent. The pursuit of the Hulk had greatly reduced General Ross's prestige in the military. Now in this operation, General Ross would never allow failure again. Bang, bang, bang. Soldiers landed from the armed helicopter along the tactical rope and quickly landed on the ground. Teams of soldiers quickly formed tactical formations and advanced towards Viken Avenue. Fox Hunter Squad, stay alert. Colonel Rutherford Rudolph, the captain of the team codenamed Fox Hunter, had a gleam in his eyes. He made a few gestures with his right hand and took the lead in advancing. Boom. As the soldiers advanced, a huge figure fell from the sky. In the horrified eyes of Rutherford and others, a silver-white arm slapped down at high speed. These soldiers had no time to react and were directly slapped into the ground. In front of the Fox Hunter squad, a metal robot hundreds of meters tall flashed a mechanical red light. Ultron had already mastered all the data of New York City. It can be said that New York City has become the eyes of Ultron. The Ultron army is out, no one is allowed to approach here. Ultron's cold voice sounded, and inside the huge Ultron body, one Ultron robot after another quickly flew out from the abdomen, flew into the sky, and quickly spread throughout New York City. Ultron's body itself is a huge base, with all the facilities in the base. The core is the Ultron Army assembly room in Ultron's abdomen. One Ultron robot after another can be produced according to Ultron's data consciousness. This is a design based on Alan's theory, which truly achieves Ultron integration. In the sky, Ultron's robots flew past quickly, and all the important roads in New York City have been controlled by Ultron. The military suffered heavy losses in the first encounter. The military has been cleared out. In Viken Avenue, Tony Stark, who was wearing a huge anti-Hulk armor, spoke Veronica's cold voice from his visor. At the same time, the image of New York City's military soldiers being easily defeated by the Ultron machine army flashed in front of Tony Stark. Shit, the situation is getting worse and worse. Isn't justice always going to win? In the comics, why can't all the superheroes' brutal abuse of their enemies happen in reality? This is such a shitty real world. Tony Stark raised his mustache, cursed, raised his right hand, pointed his palm at Aaron's, and a trace of solemnity flashed across his eyes. Boom. A ball of red palm cannon was released instantly. The scorching temperature made the air begin to distort. The energy cannon of the anti-Hulk armor could even suppress the Hulk. Telekinetic barrier. Facing the palm cannon, Alan simply opened his right hand, and an invisible telekinesis was released like a tide, forming an all-round protective shield, blocking the palm cannon. Boom! The palm cannon hit the telekinetic barrier, and a dazzling fire burst out with the shock wave, but the telekinetic barrier was like a rock, and there was no shaking at all, which made Tony Stark's confident face reveal a trace of embarrassment. Well, guys, I don't think it's time to play a heroic role alone. Hey, wake up, sweethearts, it's time to fight. Tony Stark's venomous words brought the Avengers back to their senses. Thor, Captain America Rogers, Falcon Sam, Winter Soldier Bucky, War Machine Colonel Rhodey looked heavy-hearted and took a fighting stance at the same time. Avengers, attack. Captain America Rogers held the vibranium shield in his right hand and shouted, Avengers, attack again, full of momentum. Tony Stark rushed towards Alan's first, and the thrusters on his body brought Tony Stark terrifying speed. The golden and red giant anti-Hulk armor almost instantly arrived in front of Alan's, and the huge mechanical right arm quickly smashed towards Alan's, and the terrifying force made the air sound like a sonic boom. Too slow. Alan's eyes were cold, and he raised his right hand and caught Tony Stark's right fist with his palm. His super strength burst out and he pulled the heavy anti-Hulk armor over. Boom! Looking at the anti-Hulk armor being pulled over, Alan's pressed his left hand directly on the metal visor, and with his left hand, he smashed the entire anti-Hulk armor onto the ground. The huge force caused a huge deep pit to appear on the ground. Bang! Alan's let go of the anti-Hulk armor, turned around quickly, caught the shield thrown by Captain America Rogers in violation of the laws of physics, and threw it directly into the sky. Boom! Falcon Sam, who was flying over Alan's head, was instantly hit by the shield. The huge force exploded, directly shooting down Falcon Sam. Winter Soldier Bucky rushed to the front of Alan's, and the mechanical arm processed by Tony Stark smashed down, but was directly caught by Alan's left hand, and he grabbed the feet of Winter Soldier Bucky with his right hand, blocking Winter Soldier Bucky in front of him. Boom! Thor's hammer hit Winter Soldier Bucky directly, and the huge force instantly knocked Winter Soldier Bucky into a building. At the same time, Alan's raised his right hand, and a ball of terrifying electric current was released from the palm of his hand. Crackling, bang! The electric current directly hit Thor's chest, knocking Thor back dozens of meters away. In just one round, all the Avengers knelt. F***K, if all villains are so perverted, we might as well switch to villains. Tony Stark flew out of the pit with the anti-Hulk armor, and his huge body stood on the ground again, with missiles raining down on Alan's. The metal melted. A sneer appeared on Alan's face, and the metal melting superpower he had just obtained was released, as if forming a metal isolation position. All missiles within 20 meters of Alan's melted rapidly. Bang, bang, bang. The three giants of the Avengers, Tony Stark and Thor in anti-Hulk armor, and Captain America Rogers in anti-Alan's armor, attacked Alan's at the same time. Tony Stark clenched his fists, and the circular arc reactor provided energy crazily. The mechanical arm slammed into Alan's head. Thor held Thor's hammer, and thunder roared all over his body, smashing into Alan's back. Captain America Rogers' left hand ejected a dagger made of high shock wave vibranium particles, and his right hand held a vibranium shield. His right hand smashed into Alan's chest, and his left hand stabbed into Alan's abdomen. Air shock. Alan's eyes were cold, and he raised his right fist and suddenly punched the air in front of him. The whole space was shattered like a mirror. A terrifying shock energy swept around, and the three giants who rushed over were instantly sent flying back. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories, and never miss out on a great listen.